Chapter 87. Xiao Xian didn't know what the bird would look like when it grew up, what its habits would be, and what its flying ability would be. Maybe it would be similar to a chicken, or maybe a bird of prey. If it was the former, it could only be used as food. If it was the latter, he could train it to be used as a falcon. Even if it couldn't hunt, it could be used as an early warning. Of course, it was too early to say. Xiao Xian didn't know the potential of this bird. If it didn't have any reason to exist, Xiao Xian didn't need to do anything. The others would kill it. After all, it wasn't Caesar. When Caesar was still young, he was marked by the shaman. Even if he didn't have the wolf nature, no one dared to have any ideas about him in the tribe. There was an ice cave in the tribe near the top of the mountain. Many people stored food that wasn't pickled there, but they had a hand over a part of it as a reward. Xiao Xian also put some meat in the ice cave. He couldn't pickle all the meat he brought back every time. Caesar didn't like pickled meat, and Old Ku often ate that kind of meat. It wasn't good to eat it for a long time. Not to mention, now there was another bird. He couldn't feed them all pickled meat, right? It's so troublesome. Xiao Xian sighed. He could directly throw the little chick away or give it to Caesar as food, but he always felt that he should try to raise it. 3 days later, the little chick opened its eyes. This was much earlier than Xiao Xian expected. He originally thought that the bird would be like many birds he had seen in his previous life, and that it would take at least 7 to 10 days to open its eyes. He didn't expect that it would only open its eyes after 3 days. It also had more feathers on its body, but it still couldn't walk. When it was hungry, it would cha-cha, open its mouth wide, as if it was afraid that people couldn't see or hear it. During these 3 days, Xiao Xian was at home making stoneware. Xiao Xian now had some basic tools, so he could finish most of the stoneware at home. Old Ku would occasionally come over to take a look. He asked Xiao Xian to rest for a few days and craft some stoneware. When he had enough, he would go to the training ground to train. Xiao Xian only needed 1 night of sleep to fully recover. In the past 3 days, he had polished a lot of stone tools. Some were used to set traps, some were used for training, and he had also polished a batch of better tools for the next hunt. He had already decided to follow Mai and the others on their next hunt. "Xian!" someone shouted from outside. The 2 men who came over were Tu and Jieba, who were currently in charge of the affairs in the cave. They carried 4 fishes over to Xiao Xian. Since Xiao Xian often brought gifts to the kids in the orphanage, the kids in the orphanage would often bring some fish they caught that day to Xiao Xian. Many people never went back after they left the orphanage. For example, Ku, who was in charge of the orphanage before Xiao Xian, never went back. However, the other kids who awakened at the same time as Xiao Xian did go back a few times. Whether they wanted to go back to show off their hunting results or for other reasons, at least they did not directly cut off contact with the kids in the orphanage. Of course, this was all because Xiao Xian brought a series of changes to the kids' lives after he took over the management of the orphanage in the orphanage. No matter what happened to the other kids after they left the orphanage, Xiao Xian would always bring some food to the kids in the orphanage every time he came back from a hunt. After all, he had enough food for himself, so it was not a big deal to share some with kids. The kids in the orphanage were also grateful to Xiao Xian. Because of Xiao Xian, their lives had changed a lot, and they were now much healthier. Xiao Xian did not refuse their kindness. It was rare for the 2 of them to bring the fish over. Although the fish could not provide much energy for Xiao Xian now, it could still improve his appetite. Every time Jieba and Tu came over, their eyes were filled with envy. It was really good to become a totem warrior. They could have their own cabin, hunt for more food, and grow faster. Xiao Xian was not as tall as them in the orphanage, but it had not been long since he awakened, and he was already taller than Jieba, who was the biggest kid in the orphanage. Don't be jealous. Maybe it will be your turn next year. Xiao Xian carried a small piece of marinated animal meat to them. As usual, everyone in the orphanage can only eat a little bit. Don't eat too much, or you will die. Every time, Xiao Xian gave them the meat of the lowest level. They could not bear the meat of the higher level, and there was not much of it. If there was too much meat, they would not be able to absorb it. In the past, Mai and Lang Jie also gave Xiao Xian some lower-level meat jerky. As for the meat jerky of the 4-fanged wild boar or the thorn black wind, The kids in the orphanage could not even touch it. In the past, Xiao Xian did not know about this. But after he learned about the relationship between the two, he strictly controlled the meat and the amount of meat he sent to the orphanage. After Jiaba and two left, Xiao Xian carried a fish over. After killing it, he tore off some meat and put it in front of the little chick. The little chick opened its beak wide just now, but after the meat was put in front of it, it closed its beak tightly. Now it was the animal meat, and it continued to open its beak and swallow. "You are so King picky," Xiao Xian cursed. Holding the fish, Xiao Xian looked at Caesar, who was lying on the side. Looking at Xiao Xian's eyes, and then looking at the fish in Xiao Xian's hands, Caesar turned its head to one side, refusing to look at Xiao Xian or the fish in Xiao Xian's hands. "CK, you are all picky." Originally, he wanted to feed the little chick with the fish, but now it seemed that the fish was disliked by the two of them. On the 7th day, Xiao Xian had almost finished preparing the tools. He planned to go to the training ground with old Ku. After thinking for a while, Xiao Xian decided to take the little chick with him. Otherwise, who knew what the little chick would do? The little chick grew very quickly, changing its appearance every day. Xiao Xian guessed that it was because this place was special, so the birds grew quickly. Its vitality was also tenacious. Xiao Xian had no experience in raising birds, so he wasn't that careful, but the chick grew healthily. It just ate a lot every day, and not long after it slept, it would start chirping cha-cha. Now, the little chick often didn't stay in its nest. If Xiao Xian wasn't paying attention, it would jump out of the grass nest that Xiao Xian made for it, then crawl around the table. If it found Caesar lying beside the table, it would immediately roll down and land on the wolf's back. Caesar was so angry that he bared his teeth. There were a few times when he almost died under the wolf's claws. Fortunately, Caesar was obedient. He knew that Xiao Xian didn't want him to hurt the chick, so he endured it. Otherwise, he would have already eaten it as a snack. Xiao Xian felt that not only was the chick tenacious, but it was also very bold. After only a few days, it dared to directly peck Caesar's wolf nose. Although it was still a chick, its pecking strength was quite strong. Xiao Xian already had many pecking marks on the wooden stick that he used to pick meat for it. It wasn't afraid when it landed on the wolf's back. It continued to peck, and a few of Caesar's wolf fur were plucked. He didn't know if it was really bold, or if there was something wrong with its brain. It was sent flying by Caesar's kick a few times, but nothing happened. It would continue to cause trouble next time. The little chick was too noisy. It chirped cha-cha all day long. Xiao Xian directly named it Cha-Cha. On the 10th day, the brown fur on Cha-Cha's body grew denser and thicker. It could even stand up and walk, but if it walked too fast, it would fall to the ground. It wasn't very stable. Xiao Xian did what he did a few days ago. He took Cha-Cha and Caesar to find old Ku first. Then, they went to the training ground together. When Xiao Xian was training, old Ku watched from a distance. Cha-Cha also watched. The old man recently especially liked to play with the chick with a stoneworm. Cha-Cha didn't eat stoneworms, but it liked to peck at them for fun. Old Ku used a branch to hold a stone worm and shook in front of it. Cha-Cha would stretch its neck and lift its weak wings a little. It would enter battle mode and then rush up to peck. Not long after, the stone worm held by old Ku was pecked to pieces. Xiao Xian came to take a rest after breaking a round of trap bombing. When he saw the pecked stone worm held by old Ku, he smiled and said, "It's too aggressive. I guess it's a fighter jet. It wants to fight everything it sees. But it was good to be fierce. It wouldn't starve to death immediately if it flew out, unless it wanted to die." Fighting chicken, old Ku was stunned. Then he smiled and said, "That's a good name. In the future, it will be more powerful than those chickens with beautiful tails in the mountains." Xiao Xian recalled the pheasants that were like ostriches in the mountains. If Cha-Cha grew as big as those pheasants in the mountains and attacked people, it would be impossible to keep it in the tribe. They would either kill it or throw it far away. The tribe wouldn't allow such a creature to exist. No matter if it looked like a chicken or an eagle in the future, it should be trained well. When he went back in the afternoon, Xiao Xian met Ta, who was on duty in the patrol team. "Just in time. I was going to send a message to you." I didn't expect to see you here. Toho said, the shaman wants you to go up the mountain tomorrow. Got it. I'll go up the mountain tomorrow. There's something good. Tuo whispered and gave Xiao Xian a look. The so-called something good was probably about the green thief. Xiao Xian understood. He thanked Tuo and left. On his way back, Xiao Xian opened the animal skin bag and looked at the bird that seemed to be dozing. He wondered if he should take it up the mountain tomorrow. Chapter 88. The next day, Xiao Xian directly went up the mountain with the animal skin bag. It was always good to tell the shaman when he raised a bird. Cha-Cha was in the animal skin bag. It had been put in the animal skin bag so many times that it was used to it and didn't cry out all the time. The people on the mountain were very familiar with Xiao Xian. Every time they saw Xiao Xian, someone would take the initiative to greet him. Xiao Xian would respond with a smile, no matter if they were from the Ta or the other camp. You're here. The shaman had been waiting in the stone house for a long time. When he saw Xiao Xian, the smile on his face deepened, and more wrinkles appeared on his old face. However, not everyone could be treated like this by the shaman. Not to mention, Xiao Xian was still young, and he was almost the only one among the younger generation in the tribe who could be treated like this by the shaman. Without saying anything, Xiao Xian directly walked in and sat on the straw mat. Cha-Cha. When Xiao Xian sat down, Cha-Cha, who was in the animal skin bag, made a sound. Probably because he was aware of the unfamiliar surroundings and the animal skin bag was next to the straw mat, he made a sound of uneasiness. When Xiao Xian entered the house, the shaman glanced at the animal skin bag. Now that he heard the sound, the smile on his face turned into doubt. Xiao Xian reached out and took out Cha-Cha from the bag. Compared to 10 days ago, when it was just hatched, now Xiao Xian couldn't even wrap it with one hand. This is... The shaman stared at the baby bird in Xiao Xian's hand. It's an egg I brought back last time. Xiao Xian told the shaman the whole story, so I want to try taming it. The so-called trained Caesar trained Cha-Cha. The shaman was speechless. Seeing that the shaman was still a little confused, Xiao Xian hurriedly said, No, I mean, a trained dog and a trained falcon. Old Ku said that Cha-Cha may be an aggressive bird, so I want to try training it. When the time comes to hunt, it can help. Even if I can't bring it with me to hunt, it could be used as an aerial observer in the tribe. The shaman lowered his eyelids, but his expression did not change much. He asked calmly, What if I fail? Kill him. Xiao Xian didn't hesitate. This was the rule here. If you don't listen, you'll either die or be thrown away. Generally speaking, the way people in the tribe acted was more like the former. They were straightforward, neat, and not indecisive. They didn't have such meticulous emotions at all, and acted more violently and wildly. Very good. The shaman smiled again. This time, his smile was even deeper than when Xiao Xian entered the room. He seemed to be in a good mood. Lift it up and let me see, the witch said. Xiao Xian held the bird in his hand in front of the shaman, so that the shaman could have a better look at it. His other hand was to prevent the bird from pecking at him. The person in front of him was one of the two people with the highest status in the tribe, even slightly higher than the chief. He couldn't let it offend anyone. If it really pecked the shaman, the people in the tribe wouldn't allow it to stay. However, to Xiao Xian's surprise, Cha-Cha was very obedient today. It didn't make any noise after it came in, and it didn't seem to want to peck at anyone now. The shaman quietly looked at the young bird with a circle of fluffy feathers, and Cha-Cha quietly looked at the person in front of it. After a while, the shaman raised his bark-like hand and took a palm-sized stone plate from the short table next to him. There was some black powder in the stone plate. He dipped his index finger and middle finger in the black powder with his other hand. His thumb rubbed the black powder on the index finger and middle finger, and then bent the other four fingers except for the thumb, and raised his hand in front of Cha-Cha. The thumb dipped in black powder touched Cha-Cha's head. His finger touched Cha-Cha's brown and gray feathers were immediately stained with black powder. However, Cha-Cha didn't avoid it. It still stared at the shaman and was very obedient. Xiao Xian was very surprised. This bird had never been so obedient since it came out of its shell. No matter what the shaman meant, Xiao Xian knew that the shaman allowed Xiao Xian to try taming it in the tribe. Moreover, after the shaman's blessing, even if Cha-Cha didn't live well in the tribe, no one would kill it. Even if they chose to throw it far away, no one would dare to kill it. After the shaman put down the stone plate, he didn't stop there. Instead, he took out a pattern plate, the same pattern plate that Caesar had, and handed it to Xiao Xian. Obviously, this was for Cha-Cha. It was even more important than Caesar. This was a double guarantee. Xiao Xian didn't understand why the shaman valued this bird so much. It was just a bird with an unknown future that could be used as a food reserve. Could it be that the shaman could predict the future and see Cha-Cha's potential? Unfortunately, when the shaman pretended to be mysterious, no one could pry information out of him, and no one dared to. Although he looked like he was about to die, he always made people feel reverence. Throwing Cha-Cha back into the animal skin bag, Xiao Xian bowed to the shaman to show his gratitude. With the shaman's approval, it would be much more convenient to bring Cha-Cha around the tribe in the future. After the Cha-Cha's matter was settled, the shaman went straight to the point. He asked about Xiao Xian's hunting in the Greenland. Xiao Xian told him selectively, but this time he said a little more and mentioned that he vaguely saw the shadow of the green thief. Xiao Xian didn't think that he could hide it from the shaman for the rest of his life. He would stay in the tribe for a long time, maybe for the rest of his life, and he had no one to rely on. Because of Ta, Xiao Xian wouldn't put his hope on the chief. Besides, if Ta really became the next chief, what would he do if he wanted to make things difficult for him? It wasn't that Xiao Xian had a dark mind, but after this hunting trip, he felt that he wouldn't get along well with Ta. There were no human rights in the tribe, and everything could be decided by the higher-ups. If the higher-ups said you were wrong, and they wouldn't give you any chance to explain. After these days of observation, Xiao Xian would rather believe in the shaman, the so-called spiritual leader of the tribe. Although the development of this isolated tribe wasn't very good, it wasn't seriously abnormal either. This was all thanks to the efforts of generations of shamans, and he believed that the next shaman wouldn't be bad either. He told the shaman more and more, so that he could gradually make the shaman more confident. After quietly listening to Xiao Xian's story, the shaman didn't ask much, but handed Xiao Xian 2 medicine bags with a kind face. One is for recuperation, and the other is mixed with the green thief. Drink both of them as soon as possible, especially the green thief. Don't keep it for too long. After carefully putting the 2 medicine bags away, Xiao Xian heard the shaman ask again, "Who are you going to follow in the next hunting trip?" "I was just about to tell you that I want to follow Uncle Mai and the others in the next hunting trip," Xiao Xian said. After Ta came back, he didn't kick Xiao Xian out of the advance group. Maybe he changed his mind and wanted to continue leading Xiao Xian next time. However, Xiao Xian didn't want to do that. He wanted to follow Uncle Mai and the others, so that he could have better opportunities to gain experience. If he followed the advance group, Xiao Xian wouldn't be able to keep up with their pace, and he couldn't solve the problem with a lasso every time. Maybe after hearing Xiao Xian's answer, Ta would think that Xiao Xian didn't know what was good for him, and his impression of Xiao Xian would be even worse. But so what? Xiao Xian didn't want to go in and be a decoration. He didn't want to go through that again. "Okay, I know." The shaman nodded. With the shaman's words, Xiao Xian didn't have to worry about anything else. Ta didn't even dare to say anything in front of the shaman, let alone refute him. Even his father, the chief of the tribe, Ao, wouldn't directly refute the shaman's decision. Before leaving, Xiao Xian bowed to the shaman again. The more Xiao Xian learned about the shaman, the more he felt that such an old man was really worthy of respect. It had nothing to do with brainwashing. When going down the mountain, Xiao Xian deliberately went to Mai and Lang Jie and asked them if the bird eggs they ate were the same as Cha-Cha. However, the answer he got was that Cha-Cha was a special case, just like other bird eggs. "You hatched an egg," Lang Jie said in surprise. Xiao Xian didn't know what to say. He didn't like the sound of that. Lang Jie was surprised. He pulled Xiao Xian's animal skin bag over and opened it to take a look. He even reached his hand in to take out the Cha-Cha to have a closer look. This bird was blessed by the shaman. Langa's hand was pecked hard as soon as he put it in. If it weren't for his thick skin, other people who hadn't awakened their totemic power would definitely bleed. This bird is fierce enough. It's better than Caesar. Obviously, Langa's standard of good was the same as Keek's. For most people in the tribe, no matter if it was a beast or a ferocious beast, the fiercer it was, the better. The fiercer it was, the greater the sense of achievement when slaughtering it. By the way, Xian, when you go back, check your house. The rainy season is coming. Although your house was just built this year, it's better to check it carefully. Prepare more dry wood at home. Rainy season? Xiao Xian thought about what happened last year. Indeed, the rainy season was coming. Chapter 89. It was raining cats and dogs. The raindrops were densely packed, hitting the ground rapidly. The sound of muddy water splashing could be heard everywhere. The leaves rustled as they were hit by the rain, and the sound made people wonder if the raindrops would pierce through the leaves. In the curtain of rain, a figure flashed through the forest. A stone needle as thin as a toothpick pierced through the curtain of rain and pierced through the dense branches at an extremely fast speed. With a tut sound, it pierced into a short wooden stake as thick as an arm hanging there. At this time, there were many similar stone needles piercing the wooden stake from different angles, making it look like a hedgehog. There were many such wooden stakes hanging nearby. Some were in the grass, some were hidden in the bushes, and some were hanging on the trees. Whoosh! After a quick dragging sound, the wooden stakes in different places moved faster. At the same time, more stone needles flew out. Tut, tut, tut! On the grass, in the bushes, in the air. Everywhere, there were more stone needles on the stumps. The pitter-patter of raindrops hitting the ground did not cause the stone needles to deviate at all. Whoosh! The figure in the rain turned over, jumped over the branches in front of him, and landed steadily. The sound of landing was inaudible in the surrounding raindrops. Xiao Xian wiped his face and went to pick up the wooden stakes. He had been training like this these days. At first, he practiced spearhead darts, then he practiced thinner stone thorns, and now he was practicing stone needles that were thinner than stone thorns. He thought of the white hares he encountered in the Greenland hunting ground. They were so soft, but they could pierce through thick planks. Even the body of a mid-level totem warrior could not resist them. One of the reasons was the material of the white hares. Another, more important reason was that the white hares were very fast. This was something that Xiao Xian was trying to do. He hoped that one day he would be able to use a thin blade of grass to pierce through a thick wooden board. But for now, he could only practice step by step. If he couldn't even use stone, then he wouldn't be able to use grass. There was still a long way to go. Because it had been raining these days, Xiao Xian did not let Old Ku come out. It was a torture to come out in such heavy rain. Every time Gu went to Old Ku to get some stone tools, he would mock Old Ku for becoming weak. In the past, he used to walk up the mountain step by step with his crutches. He did not ask for help when he went out, but now, Old Ku rode Caesar when he went out and relied on Xiao Xian when he went up the mountain. He did not even go out when it was raining. He was so damn delicate. Old Ku was not annoyed. He did what he was supposed to do and pretended that he did not hear anything. Gana was filled with jealousy and jealousy. He would not tell Gu that Xiao Xian had asked for some herbs from a shaman. He was in the recuperation period. In the past, he had a negative mentality and did not care whether he lived or died. But now, he wanted to live a few more years and see how far Xiao Xian could go. Caesar and Cha-Cha were left at Old Ku's place. Xiao Xian sometimes wondered if he should expand the house and let Old Ku move in with him. Anyway, he was alone, and Old Ku was alone. It would save him the trouble of running between the two places every day. While thinking, Xiao Xian was tidying up the wooden stakes and the grass ropes. Last year, the rainy season would start after the next hunting trip. Unfortunately, it was earlier this year. The shaman asked everyone to be prepared, and the hunting team that was going to set off had to postpone their trip. Behind Xiao Xian, a slender worm like a snake slithered out from a tree. Different from a snake, it had many legs. Sticking out its tongue like a snake, it stared at Xiao Xian who was under the tree. Its body slid down the trunk silently, and its slender legs allowed it to stay on the trunk steadily. When it got close to Xiao Xian, it twisted its body and coiled its front half, forming an S shape. Then it aimed at Xiao Xian and opened its mouth to bite the back of Xiao Xian's neck like an arrow released from a bow. Xiao Xian didn't even look behind him. He just casually raised his hand, and when it was only half a palm away from his neck, he had already blocked in front of it and tightly choked its neck. His fingers tightened slightly. Crack! Crack! The worm's head was separated from its body. Xiao Xian flicked his finger and flicked the worm's head to one side of the grass, while the headless worm's body was flung to the other side of the forest when he withdrew his hand. During the whole process, Xiao Xian did not look at the worm at all. After tidying up the stone needles, Xiao Xian stood up and glanced around. He had seen those worms several times in the past 2 days. He heard that they would come out of the ground every year during the rainy season. Not only these worms, but other creatures would also come out of the ground one after another. But except during the rainy season, these worms would almost never appear in the mountains of the training ground. Stepping on the muddy ground, Xiao Xian suddenly lifted his foot and kicked a stone away. The stone that was kicked away was mixed with muddy water, and it shot straight to the grass. A 2-palm-long, scorpion-like worm that had just come out of the ground was pierced through by the stone. Old Ku said that the worms that came out of the ground during the rainy season would take the initiative to hurt people, and they were very poisonous. Don't get bitten or stung by them, and kill everyone you see. It was said that some worms would run to the tribe, so during the rainy season, the children in the tribe who had not awakened their totemic power were locked up at home. Everyone would sprinkle some kind of grass juice around the house, which had a certain effect of repelling worms. Whoa! A loud noise came from the other side of the river. The warriors in the training ground only felt a chill go straight to their heads. They all stopped what they were doing and jumped to a high place to look at the other side of the river. Xiao Xian had almost reached the place where he lived, and there were no hills to hide him. He climbed up a tree and looked at the river in front of the tribe. In the curtain of rain, the figure that jumped out of the river was not clear because it was too far away. But even if the figure was far away from the tribe and was not completely exposed, one could still guess its huge size. This was the decisive factor that stopped the tribesmen from exploring the river. The river fear beast was the overlord of this boundless river. The word dread that the tribesmen gave it showed how much they feared it. Although the huge dread beast was not clear what it looked like, just by looking at its size and hearing its voice, people already felt an unparalleled sense of oppression. When they appeared, it meant that the real rainy season had begun, and not just an occasional storm. This was just as the witch predicted. The rainy season really came early. When the dread beast jumped up, its roar was like a siren in people's ears, and it was so loud that people felt like their eardrums were about to burst. But when the huge dread beast dived into the water again, it would make a muffled sound like thunder. It was not harsh, but it was even louder than the previous one. It made people feel like their chests were hit by a heavy hammer again and again. If you put a cup of water in the room, you would see the water in the cup shake violently. At this time last year, Xiao Xian, like other kids in the orphan cave, covered their ears and hid in the cave. That kind of sound was torturous for them, and many of them were shivering. Not only the kids in the orphan cave, but also the kids in the tribe would hide in their own homes and block their ears with things. But they still could not relieve the uncomfortable feeling caused by the sound. Some of them even bled from their ears and noses. Maybe for those dread beasts, the rainy season was a happy season. They frequently jumped out of the water as if they were very happy. Even if they were far away from the riverbank, the image they brought was not reduced. For the tribe, the rainy season was a disaster. The only good thing was that the dread beast would not get close to the bank, let alone go ashore. Otherwise, the tribe might have already ceased to exist. When a huge dread beast appeared, the tribe would hold an emergency meeting. The team leaders of the 2 hunting groups would assign people to go down the mountain to be responsible for the defense. This was also the annual defense battle in the rainy season. During the rainy season, something might come out of the river. That was why the tribe's hunting group delayed going out, because they had to guard against the creatures in the river. Plus equals, it's a new week. Shamelessly asking for a recommendation ticket. Chapter 90. Not long after Xiao Xian returned home, Lang Jie came to inform him about the patrol. Every hunting group was responsible for an area, and they were divided into 3 groups taking turns to guard the area. Participating in the defense did not necessarily mean that they would encounter danger. It was just a precaution. After all, there were too many unknown factors in the river, and it was always good to be prepared. Mai and the others will start patrolling tonight. You come with me tomorrow morning to replace them. Lang Jie said. Okay, I got it. What I need to bring? Xiao Xian asked. You don't need to bring too much. Just some handy stoneware will be enough. You only need half a day each time. Lang Jie pointed to a place at the foot of the mountain, over there by the river. It's not far from where you used to fish. You stayed in the cave last year, so you may not know. When the rainy season comes, the river level will rise a lot. It will probably reach there. Lang Jie pointed to Xiao Xian. There was a line made of stones. Below the stone line, there was not a single house. Therefore, the people who lived at the bottom of the line would only live near the foot of the mountain, but would not directly build a house at the foot of the mountain. That was why the water level rose during the rainy season. The people who had temporarily camped near the river for fishing had all evacuated. Before the rainy season ended, they would not go near the river again. Thinking that Xiao Xian might not know what would happen during the rainy season, Lang Jie specially told Xiao Xian some things that happened in the past years. When the rain outside became lighter, Lang Jie took Xiao Xian to walk around the area so that Xiao Xian could be mentally prepared. Although the area they were guarding wouldn't be too difficult, they still had to pay more attention. That is to say, the hunting group will not leave for hunting until the rainy season ends? Xiao Xian asked. He had thought that they would only stay in the tribe for a while, and if there was no trouble, they would go hunting. But according to Lang Ga's words, did it mean that they would have to stay in the tribe for the whole rainy season? Then what would people with insufficient food eat? There's nothing we can do about it. That's the rule of the tribe. For example, there are many people on the mountain. They store a lot of food, and the level of their prey is also high, so they can survive. But those at the foot of the mountain are in trouble. Even if they store some meat, the level of the meat is not high, so the energy provided is limited. Most of the time, they will still be hungry. Lang Jie chuckled. This is much better than winter, because during the rainy season, some things will come out. We can pick them up and eat them. Things? Xiao Xian couldn't help but frown when he thought of the various insects that came out of the training ground. If there was really nothing to eat, he could only start with them. You'll know when the time comes. Lang Jie didn't want to say too much. Anyway, you won't starve to death. Xiao Xian was really curious now. According to Lang Ga's words, it was not the kind of insect that appeared in the training ground, but something else. It's only once a year. Although it may be dangerous, you'll be fine as long as you're careful. Don't worry. Lang Jie clenched his fist and hammered Xiao Xian's shoulder to encourage him. Xiao Xian rubbed his shoulder and looked at the river in the rain. From time to time, river overlords would appear on the river's surface in the distance. After observing those river overlords, Xiao Xian had some doubts. Those river overlords seemed to be heading in the same direction, which could be seen from the way they leaped. If it was an individual case, it would be fine. But all the river overlords that appeared on the water surface were all heading in the same direction. There was no exception. Is it the upstream or downstream of the river? Xiao Xian pointed the direction where the river overlords leaped and asked Lang Ga, upstream or downstream. I don't know. I've never been there. It's too far. Lang Jie didn't care. For him, there was no difference between upstream and downstream of the river, so he didn't think too much about it. Xiao Xian looked in that direction, thinking about where it was and why those river overlords were heading in that direction. The river was big enough. If it wasn't fresh water, people would think that it was a sea at first glance. A sea? Could it be a river that flowed into the sea? Xiao Xian recalled the 2 hunting expeditions he went out with the hunting team and speculated about the direction and terrain. He came to a conclusion that those river overlords were probably heading downstream of the river. If this river really flowed into the sea, then why would those river overlords swim towards the sea during the rainy season? Many fish would swim back and forth periodically due to reproduction, food, wintering, and many other factors. This was the so-called migratory characteristic. Then, were these river overlords also carrying out similar migratory behavior? Xiao Xian shook his head. Everything was just a guess. Even if he asked Lang Jie and the others, they wouldn't get the answer because they didn't even know what a sea was. Whether those river overlords were swimming in a direction during the rainy season or not, Xiao Xian couldn't do anything about it now. However, when he went back later, Xiao Xian would record these phenomena in his notebook. Xiao Xian had already sorted out some animal skins suitable for recording things, including the pictures he saw in the cave. Xiao Xian had drawn them out from memory and stored them away. If the animal skins couldn't be kept for too long, he would copy them on stone slabs. Xiao Xian moved his eyes away from those giant beasts in the distance and looked at the riverbank for a while. Suddenly, he said, Lang Jie, do you think it's okay to build some fish fences here? Lang Jie was thinking about how much food they could get this rainy season, but Xiao Xian's words pulled him back to reality. He asked in confusion, fish fences? What's that? It's something made of wooden sticks and nets to catch fish. Xiao Xian roughly described it, and then continued, I'm thinking if we can use these fish fences to make a simple trap. Trap? Langa's eyes suddenly lit up. It's actually very simple. Xiao Xian took out his stone knife and drew on the ground. Lang Jie, who also knew how to set traps, could infer what Xiao Xian meant when he saw what Xiao Xian said and connected it to the drawing on the ground. Patting his head, Lang Jie said regretfully, Why didn't I think of this before? Xiao Xian wanted to make a simple fish fence-style trap. It wasn't difficult, and it didn't require any more sophisticated settings. Like setting a fish fence, it was just a fence made of wood or stone pillars. The fish fences would roll inwards like mosquito coils, but some were round inwards, and some were square inwards. Xiao Xian wanted to see the differences. The only opening of this kind of simple fish fence-style trap was facing the river, or he could use the fish fences to make a pocket, like the letter omega, omega. Unlike the former, this kind of trap had its back facing the river, so when the tide went down, the fish swimming in would be trapped inside. Unless the fish swimming in were very intelligent, they could generally be trapped. Xiao Xian had tried it in his previous life. However, Xiao Xian had never participated in the tribe's rainy season patrol, so he didn't know if he could add such a setting. So he asked Langa, Yes. No problem at all. Lang Jie looked at the river level that hadn't started to rise yet and called Xiao Xian, Let's hurry up and find some stones. Before the river level rises, let's set up this trap. Because some things in the river ate wood, they couldn't use wood to set up fish fences. They could only use stones. However, when they didn't pay attention to stones, it was relatively easy to make stone pillars for the fish fences. Therefore, when I brought the first group of people to start patrolling, he saw Xiao Xian and Lang Jie working on the riverbank. From the place near the river to the stone line set up by the tribe, there were fish fences at a certain distance. Because they were in a hurry and didn't pay attention to aesthetics, the stone pillars weren't uniform in thickness. Some of them were even as thick as a person's thigh, and people could stand steadily on them. Chapter 91. What are you doing? Is this a trap? I came over and asked. When the river rises, we can stand on it. The person standing next to me laughed. They didn't know why Xiao Xian and Lang Jie were doing this, but they all knew that Lang Jie was interested in setting traps. Although most of the time he only set traps like ground bows, he would also set some other traps. Lang Jie told the others about his and Xiao Xian's idea, and they were all very curious. As for the fish fences here, it was not a problem for them, but also convenient for them. When the river rose, they could even jump on them. You should go back. We'll patrol tonight. Lang Jie, you bring some people here early tomorrow. I said, Okay, we'll go back as soon as we finish the last one. I didn't notice it just now, but now I realize that I'm really hungry. Lang Jie touched his belly and looked at his work, very satisfied. Xiao Xian, who had finished his last fish fence, found that the people who came with me had brought not only their own stone tools and animal skin bags with food, but also a straw net. Uncle Mai, what are you going to do with the straw net? Xiao Xian asked. Well, Mai smiled, of course it's for food. Seeing that Xiao Xian was still confused, Mai said, You'll know when you come here tomorrow. By the way, remember to bring a big net bag when you come here tomorrow. Although Xiao Xian didn't know what they were going to put in the net bag, he still prepared a net bag for them. The next day, Xiao Xian brought Caesar and Cha-Cha to Old Ku's place early in the morning and then went to the patrol area. When Xiao Xian arrived, Lang Jie and the other patrolmen were already there. What surprised Xiao Xian was that Mai and the other straw nets were filled with watermelon-sized snails. Not only that, but they could also see that near the river bank, sharp horns that were gradually growing in size appeared on the surface of the river. Those were all conches, and they were all moving towards the riverbank. Although it didn't seem like a lot now, if they continued like this, everyone would be able to get a lot by the time the patrol ended. Just look at the microphones and they would know. Their shells were so thick that even the piranhas in the river couldn't do anything to them. However, the people in the tribe were different. After all, people could use tools to pull them out of their shells. Don't be fooled by their hard shells. If you take them back and cook them, the shells will break easily. In the past, some people wanted to use their shells to make things, but after a period of time, they broke easily, Mai said to Xiao Xian. Even if these snails didn't provide much energy individually, the quantity was there, and they could indeed solve the food problem. No wonder Lang Jie wasn't worried. According to Mai, these snails usually didn't come out. They would only come ashore in large batches after the rainy season officially started. The good thing was that these snails didn't have any attack power. They were completely provided as rations for people who were short of food during the rainy season. They didn't know if there were any parasites, but judging from the people in the tribe who had been eating these snails for so many years, there shouldn't be any problem. Since the people who changed shifts had arrived, Mai and the others didn't stay for long. After a night of rain, they hurried back to eat something and sleep. After a good rest, they would come back to continue the patrol. You guys stay here first. If you find something abnormal that you can't deal with, blow the whistle immediately. Do you hear me? Mai said to Lang Jie and the others. Got it. It's not the first time we patrol in the rainy season. I've already told Xian. I'll take care of him. Don't worry. Lang Jie waved to Mai and then immediately rushed over to check the fish fences made yesterday. The rain didn't stop. At most, it would only rain a little. The river level had risen a lot compared to yesterday. Yesterday, more than half of the fish fences closest to the river were already submerged in the water. At this level, no fish would get in. It was still early, and they didn't find anything abnormal on the river. Xiao Xian picked up the snails with the others. Xiao Xian didn't know which species these snails belonged to. They had different shapes and colors, but Lang Jie said they could all be eaten. Xiao Xian didn't care too much. When they climbed ashore, he directly picked them up and threw them into the straw net. However, they stuck close to the ground, so it was not easy to pull them down from the stones on the slippery areas. They didn't encounter any problems for most of the day. Except for the various snails climbing to the riverbank, there was nothing else. When Xiao Xian went back that day, he sent a lot of snails to the kids in the orphan cave and Old Ku. After all, he couldn't eat so many snails by himself. Caesar didn't eat snails, but Cha-Cha enjoyed them for a while. She only tried to peck the snails out of the shells for fun. On the third day of Xiao Xian's patrol, the river level had completely surpassed the first fish fence. The first fish fence was not big, only 2 meters in diameter. At that time, they thought it was too small, so they didn't tear it down and rebuild it. Instead, they made the second fish fence much bigger. Therefore, when the river level surpassed the first fish fence, the second fish fence, which was almost parallel to the first one, was only partly submerged in the water. What do you think? Lang Jie picked up the snails and threw them into the straw net and shouted to Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian stood by the first fish fence and looked inside carefully. There were no fish. Other than that, there were no piranhas with big heads and mouths full of sharp teeth. There were no other fishes around, as if they had all disappeared. When the water level was rising, there was not even a single fish to be seen. So, the fish fences were all for nothing? No, he could wait and see what else was in the river besides the fishes. Just keep them. Xiao Xian looked at the fish fences under his feet and decided to leave them here for the time being. He would remove them when the water level went down. Anyway, they wouldn't interfere with the patrol. Nothing, Xiao Xian answered. When he got up and was about to go to the bank, Xiao Xian suddenly felt a chill sweep over him. Danger! Just when he was about to jump away from the fish fences and run to the bank, he heard Lang Ga's hurried shout. Don't move! Don't move! To move or not to move? These two thoughts flashed through Xiao Xian's mind in an instant. In the end, Xiao Xian decided to follow Lang Ga's words and stay there. Although he didn't move, the muscles all over his body were ready to move. Once something happened, he would move to the next step. His hand had already touched the stone knife. On the other side, Lang Jie didn't have time to pick up the snails anymore. He ran over with the others, and when he ran, he threw the snails in his hand into the water 30 meters away from Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian could hear the snails falling into the river, but the needle-like gaze was still there. Xiao Xian was frozen in place, maintaining his previous posture, not moving an inch. If he looked up, he would be able to see the source of the cold gaze. But at this moment, Xiao Xian held back, and his eyes didn't wander. Not far away from Xiao Xian, a triangular head appeared on the surface of the water. There were two round eyes on the head. At this moment, a soft sound came from the water in front of him. It wasn't obvious in the rain, but Xiao Xian heard it clearly. Gua, Xiao Xian, F***CK? He finally knew why Lang Jie told him not to move. Chapter 92. On Lang Ga's side. A few people were trying to attract attention. Xiao Xian felt the gaze in front of him stare at him for about 2 minutes before moving away. Xian, run! Lang Jie shouted from the side. There was no need for Lang Jie to shout. Xiao Xian had already sensed that the other party had moved away from him. His legs gathered strength in an instant, and his bent knees shot out. Crack! The stone pillar under his feet suddenly cracked, and Xiao Xian's body shot out like an arrow. The moment Xiao Xian left the stone pillar, he caught a glimpse of a long shadow shooting out and then retreating quickly from the corner of his eye. If Xiao Xian had been a little slower, he might have been swept by that long shadow. Xiao Xian knew what that long shadow was. If he was touched by it, he would be directly dragged into the water. At the same time, Lang Jie and the others had already thrown the spears in their hands at the creature in the water. They didn't dare to directly throw the spears earlier because Xiao Xian's position could easily injure him. Now that Xiao Xian had left, they didn't have to be restrained. The muscles on their arms bulged as they threw the spears in their hands. The stone spears pierced through the curtain of rain. Xiao Xian could still hear the whooshing sound of the spears as they flew through the air. Puff, puff, puff. 3 spears pierced the body of the creature in the water, and red blood flowed out. If the piranhas were here, they would have followed the smell and come over to snatch it. But now, other than the struggling of the creature that had been shot, there was nothing else. Whooshing, another 2 spears were thrown. Long straw ropes were tied to the spears. Obviously, they were used to drag the prey that had just been shot to the shore. As the people on the shore retracted the straw ropes, Xiao Xian finally saw the figure of the creature. It was a little different from what he had imagined. The creature that had been dragged to the shore did indeed look like a frog, but what was more obvious was that it had a long tail behind it. A tadpole? A tadpole that had not yet developed into a frog, but had grown both front and rear limbs? Xiao Xian didn't expect to see something like this when he heard the screams just now. The long-tailed frog that was shot was still struggling, but its struggle was a little weaker than before. Its forelimbs and back legs were kicking, leaving marks on the riverbank. After the long-tailed frog was stabbed a few more times and stopped struggling, Xiao Xian took a closer look. In addition to its long tail, its limbs were webbed instead of toes. Opening its mouth, there were some sharp teeth in its mouth. Other than that, it looked exactly like a fully transformed frog. Not only that, but the size of this long-tailed frog also made Xiao Xian speechless. Not counting its long tail, its body length was already more than 5 meters long. No wonder Lang Jie and the others were so nervous. It was Xiao Xian's first time seeing such a big frog with fangs and a long tail. I was almost scared to death just now. Seeing that Xiao Xian was safe and sound, Lang Jie let out a long sigh of relief. Then he warned Xiao Xian this thing came out. You have to be careful from now on. It's best not to go to the fish fence for the next few days. Whether or not they could catch fish was a small matter. Their safety was the most important thing. Lang Jie still had a lingering fear. He didn't expect the thing in the water to come out so soon. When he saw the two round eyes peeking out of the water very close to Xiao Xian, Lang Jie felt as if a basin of cold water had been splashed on his face. Some of the people who had been on patrol had been swept into the water. Those who had been pulled into the river never came back. Although everyone had taken precautions and hunted many of these things every year, they still fell into the trap if they were not careful. In front of the prey, they couldn't be careless. Watching the others slaughter the long-tailed frog, Lang Jie told Xiao Xian some things he needed to pay attention to. He also told Xiao Xian about some previous tragedies in order to attract Xiao Xian's attention. As for this thing, it's not bad to eat. We can still hunt some now, but in 2 days, it will be difficult to do so, Lang Jie said. On the same day, Xiao Xian hunted 3 long-tailed frogs with Lang Jie and the others. Except for the different patterns on the surface of the skin, these 3 frogs were all strange species with large fangs and long tails. The people on patrol shared some of the frogs and brought them back after the patrol. It was not bad to eat, although it was not as tender as the frog meat that Xiao Xian had eaten in his previous life. It contained more energy than snail meat. The rainy season here was relatively short compared to winter, but it was not a matter of 1 or 2 days. It was about 30 days. No one could tell the exact time because it was different every year. 2 days later, because of the incessant rain, the river level rose a lot. Xiao Xian thought that at this rate, it would take less than 10 days to cross the stone line, but the others didn't seem worried at all. When Xiao Xian came to the riverbank to patrol, from the shallow water to the deeper areas, he could see a lot of slightly triangular heads and round eyes along the riverbank, densely packed. No wonder Lang Jie said that it was difficult to hunt. There were so many long-tailed frogs. Before you could pull the frogs ashore, the straw rope would be pulled into the river by them. Sometimes, when he had nothing to do, Lang Jie would stuff mud into the shell of the snail and then throw it over, watching the long-tailed frogs shoot out their long tongues to snatch the food. Like the frogs that Xiao Xian knew, the long-tailed frogs also caught moving things. Many times, the snails thrown over were swept away by their long tongues before they fell into the water. Those long-tailed frogs never went ashore. At most, they would lie down in the shallow water, showing their triangular heads and a pair of round eyes. They also rarely croaked, unlike Xiao Xian's imagination. Occasionally, he would hear a small and short gua sound. As the river level rose, every day when Xiao Xian went over, the patrol would retreat. Because of the existence of the long-tailed frogs, they had to keep a safe distance from the river. Until one day, when Xiao Xian came to the riverbank, he found that the long-tailed frogs lying near the riverbank had all disappeared, and the river level, which had risen to the 7th fish fence, had begun to recede. The rainy season was not over. Lang Jie told Xiao Xian that this was only the first time the river level had receded in the rainy season, and there would be a few more times of receding. After the first receding, all the long-tailed frogs would disappear, and there would be no need to worry about them appearing again. At the same time, Xiao Xian also noticed that when the river level receded, the river flow, which had gradually become obvious because of the rising water during the rainy season, had changed. Now, the river did not flow in the direction where the river overlord swam, but upstream, as Xiao Xian guessed. The change in the river flow and the disappearance of the long-tailed frogs overnight all told Xiao Xian that something had happened upstream. According to Lang Jie, the river level would recede several times during the rainy season, and every time the river level receded, the river flow would change. Every year during the rainy season, there were many things that they did not know about. Because of these strange phenomena, the people in the tribe felt that this boundless river was even more mysterious. They were not willing to explore it and did not dare to explore it. When the river level receded for the first time, Xiao Xian saw the wood-eating insect in the 7th fish fence. The 7th fish fence was set up by Xiao Xian. He put a few pieces of wood in the fence, but he did not expect that the river level would recede and the wood-eating insect would be trapped inside temporarily. The wood-eating insect was like a mass of thick mucus. When it smelled the existence of wood, it would stick to the wood or directly grow and then pull the wood down. However, Xiaoxian found that there were many trees in the flooded areas, and those trees were not eaten much. If a small piece of wood was thrown into the river, it would be pulled down after more than an hour. Normally, it would not take more than 2 minutes for the floating wood to disappear. Obviously, the wood-eating insect's activities were also very abnormal during the rainy season. Therefore, Xiaoxian would put a piece of wood in the water every day when he was patrolling to see how long it would take for it to be pulled down. A thin straw rope was tied to the wood, and the other end of the rope was tied to the stone pillar so that it would not float away. After returning, Xiaoxian would record the results of the day in his secret notebook. This rainy season only lasted for 27 days, which was a few days shorter than last year. This was a normal phenomenon. According to the old warriors, the longest rainy season they had experienced was 40 days, but the shortest rainy season was no less than 25 days. When the rain stopped, the lingering dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and the long-awaited sun shone on the land once again. Everyone in the tribe felt as sunny as the weather. The children who had been cooped up in the house for nearly 30 days ran out happily and ran around barefoot, laughing loudly. The children in the cave also began to prepare things. The rainy season was over, and they could continue to fish. For the time being, they did not have to worry about being dazed by the roars from the river. Why was it temporary? Because the river monsters that had stopped roaring would appear again after a while and roar again. Xian, let's go back. Lang Jie and the others had already packed up and were ready to leave. I'll go back right away. You guys go first. Xiaoxian responded. After the rainy season, as long as they did not go into the water, they would not be in danger, so Lang Jie was not worried. After Lang Jie and the others left, Xiaoxian took out a wooden boat from the animal skin bag. This was a simple sailboat he made in the last few days of patrolling, with the wood and some small stone nails he stored in the house every day after returning home. The sail was only made of the leaves of a kind of plant, and the planks were also ordinary wood. The hull of the sailboat was only 2 palms long. The wind blew from the river bank to the river. Xiaoxian put the simple sailboat on the river, and with a little force from his fingers, the hull was pushed away. It swayed and was blown away by the wind, away from the shoal of the river bank, to the place where the boundary could not be seen. The green on the boat was particularly conspicuous. There were a lot of piranhas in the river. These big-headed, low-IQ guys that had disappeared for a rainy season began to be active again, even more active than before the rainy season. Throwing a small piece of bloody meat into the river could cause them to fight for a long time, and they were very energetic. The good thing was that they were not interested in wood, and the wood-eating insects in the river that were interested in would seem to have disappeared. Standing by the river and watching for a while, Xiaoxian carried his things and left. When he went up the mountain, he looked back at the river and could see the little dot below Yangguang gradually drifting away. Plus equals. Well, that's it for tonight. I'll continue tomorrow. Good night, everyone. Chapter 93. After the end of the rainy season, it was Ta's hunting team's turn to go hunting. This time, Xiaoxian followed Mai's hunting team to the mountaintop. When they gathered to sing the hunting song, Ta did not say anything when he saw Xiaoxian. He just looked a little unhappy, but he did not dare to show it. It seemed that the shaman had talked to him, so he did not dare to say anything. Even if he had any thoughts, he had to keep them to himself. If he showed it, it would be disrespectful to the shaman. Ta also held his breath. He thought that even without Xiaoxian, they could still get more plants. Even if they needed to set traps, could no one in the advanced group know how to do that? Did the ancestors only protect Xiaoxian, but not the elites in the tribe? He did not believe it. The other hunting team members also looked at Xiaoxian with curiosity, especially the young warriors. When they looked at Xiaoxian, they were obviously gloating. Their eyes seemed to say, "See, I told you. That guy will definitely be kicked out of the advanced group." Lang Jie was worried that Xiao Xian would think too much, so he kept comforting him on the way up the mountain. However, he did not know that Xiao Xian did not care about it at all. He was the one who had suggested it. Caesar and Cha-Cha were left in Old Ku's place. There was still some food left, and they all moved there. There was still some food in the ice cave on the mountaintop, so they would not starve. The hunting time was a little tight this time. As soon as the rainy season was over, Ta quickly gathered the leaders of each hunting team to prepare for the hunting trip. They had to come back before the full moon, because during the full moon, the beasts in the forest would be extremely violent. Therefore, according to past experience, no matter which hunting team went out at this time, they must make sure to come back before the full moon. It would be best if they could come back a few days earlier. Last time, when Xiao Xian went hunting with Mai and the others, the hunting team stopped at the second foothold on the hunting route because of the discovery of the ancestors. But this time, the hunting in the first and second footholds went smoothly, and Xiao Xian followed them to the third foothold. There were many lakes in the hunting ground of the third foothold. After the rainy season, the water level of the larger lakes rose, and a few smaller lakes appeared in other places. After the rainy season, many wild beasts came out to play, including many ferocious beasts. With the previous hunting experience and the increase in strength, the harvest this time was very rich. Because of the large proportion of high-level prey, the prey brought back this time was enough to last more than 50 days. In the tribe, Old Ku was not as worried as before. After thinking about it, Old Ku concluded that Xiao Xian did not say "don't worry" before setting off. And that was the truth. This hunting went very smoothly, and Xiao Xian also let go of his responsibilities, assisting, killing, setting traps, and so on. He was no longer a walk-on. Xiao Xian was very satisfied with the fruitful hunting. The only difference from the previous hunting trips was that as the moon became rounder and rounder at night, the forest at night seemed to be covered with a layer of hazy silver light, and the view was not so dark. But at the same time, the wild beasts and ferocious beasts at night were obviously becoming more and more violent. No matter day or night, they could hear all kinds of wild beasts and ferocious beasts roaring more frequently than before. 20 days later, the hunting team returned to the tribe. In the last few days, because of the frequent attacks of the wild beasts, many people in each hunting group had been injured. Fortunately, they had been prepared for this. Although many people were injured, only 3 people were seriously injured. Compared to the current situation, 3 people were not that serious. Fortunately, no one in Mai's hunting team was seriously injured. When they returned to the tribe, Xiao Xian found that the level of the river at the foot of the mountain had decreased a lot. The fish fences were still there. The first fish fence was originally close to the river, and after the end of the rainy season, the rising river level fell back down. Compared with before the rainy season, the river level was only a little higher, and the river water was in contact with the first fish fence. But now, more than 20 days had passed. When they came back, the river level had decreased a lot, even lower than before the rainy season. It's going to be a full moon soon, and the river level will decrease faster in the next few days. Lang Jie said. After thinking for a while, Lang Jie smiled and said, "The fish fences we set didn't catch anything during the rainy season, but after the full moon this time, maybe we will catch something." The strange thing about this world was that the 2 moons in the night sky were only full once a year. At that time, the 2 moons in the night sky would meet, overlap, and then separate again, moving in different directions. The night of the full moon was the time when the 2 moons overlapped. At this time last year, Xiao Xian, like the other children, spent most of his time in the cave. He didn't get close to the river, so naturally, he didn't see the ebb and flow of the river. This year, there were more people fishing, but when the river level decreased, they were still not allowed to touch the water. Those who were supposed to stay in the cave continued to stay in the cave. After collecting the game, Xiao Xian led Caesar and Cha-Cha back. They have been a little restless recently. You should pay attention to them. Olku said. Xiao Xian saw the pile of bones next to him. The long bones were bitten into small pieces, and Caesar didn't eat them, so he just threw them there. There were many scratches on the ground made by the wolf's claws. As for Cha-Cha, She was very active before. She wanted to peck at everything she saw. She even used her claws to scratch and cha-cha. But recently, she became very quiet and motionless. If she wasn't sleeping, she was just squatting in her nest and didn't go anywhere. After Xiao Xian returned to the wooden house, he looked at the energetic Caesar and the unusually quiet Cha-Cha. After thinking for a while, he took out his knife and decided to make something. During this hunting trip, the leaves of a tree reminded Xiao Xian of a small toy. Boomerang, also known as a boomerang, was something that Xiao Xian used to play with when he was a child. It could be made with paper, but in the tribe, it was better to use wood. Xiao Xian made a V-shaped boomerang. After becoming proficient in making stone and wood, it wasn't difficult to make a boomerang like this. He was very familiar with it. In less than an hour, Xiao Xian walked out of the door with the finished product. "Caesar, come out." Xiao Xian called out the wolf that was wandering around the house. He patted the wolf's head with the boomerang in his hand and said, "I'll throw it out. You pick it up." When he trained Caesar in the past, Xiao Xian would sometimes throw out a branch or a bone for Caesar to pick up. So, Caesar was familiar with this. Seeing Caesar's eyes on the boomerang in his hand, Xiao Xian knew that he was ready. He threw the boomerang in his hand. The boomerang that was thrown out quickly flew away. But soon, it flew in an arc to the left. After a big circle, it flew back to Xiao Xian. Caesar, who had been chasing after the boomerang, was very puzzled. He didn't understand why the boomerang would come back by itself. When Xiao Xian threw it out again, he ran after it again. What? Tuo and Kiki, who came to find Xiao Xian, were very surprised to see a piece of wood thrown out by Xiao Xian. The piece of wood made a big circle in the air and came back to Xiao Xian. "What is this?" Tuo came over and asked curiously. They had gained a lot in this hunting trip. Compared to their previous hunting trips, the quantity was still considerable. But in terms of quality, it was not as good as the green thief and the wind ball. Even though some people in the team had set up traps outside at night, they still didn't gain anything. Some of the traps were even destroyed by unknown forces. He came to find Xiao Xian to ask if Xiao Xian wanted to join the advance group again. Unexpectedly, he saw such a novel thing as soon as he arrived. "This is a boomerang," Xiao Xian said. "Can I have a try?" Tuo was itching to try. "Sure." Xiao Xian handed the boomerang to Tuo and explained the technique. "Won't it really be thrown away?" Tuo was still unsure. After all, he was used to throwing stone spears and other things. He always felt that this thing would fly far away once it was thrown out. As for flying back, no. Xiao Xian said affirmatively. "Okay, let me try first." Tuo gave a try. Seeing that it could really fly back, he was relieved and used more strength for the second time. Kiki, who was standing next to Tuo, opened his eyes wide without blinking. He saw the piece of wood thrown out by Tuo and then fly back again. He swallowed his saliva and rubbed his palms. "Let me do it." When Tuo caught the flying boomerang, Kiki rushed to grab it. However, the result of his carelessness was that the wooden boomerang was broken before it could be thrown out. Chapter 94. Kiki was beaten up by Tuo and dragged away. Before they left, Tuo and Kiki asked Xiao Xian to make 2 boomerangs for them without hesitation. Boomerangs were said to be invented by some aborigines. But here, boomerangs were not very helpful for hunting. Thinking of the ferocious beasts in the forest, they knew that boomerangs could not harm them at all. However, they could also be used to drive away birds and beasts, or as bait to attract the attention of ferocious beasts. Before Tuo left, he asked Xiao Xian whether he would join the advance group again. Xiao Xian did not give a clear answer. He only said that he would think about it when he was more powerful. Tuo and Keek's coming here might not have been ordered by Ta, but Ta must have known about it, and he did not stop them. No matter what Ta thought, Xiao Xian did not plan to join the advance group again. He felt more comfortable in Mai's hunting group. Because of Xiao Xian's previous achievements, the shaman would give him the herbs he needed. Xiao Xian gave those herbs to Old Ku, who now looked much more energetic than before. When he came to himself, he saw that Caesar was still squatting on the ground, looking at the broken boomerang. Xiao Xian walked over and picked up the broken boomerang. He threw it into the house and made a fire later. He patted Caesar's head to comfort him and said, "I'll make you a new one tomorrow." Probably because of the exercise during the day, Caesar's vigorous energy had decreased a lot. At night, Caesar was a little quieter. Xiao Xian stood at the door, looking at the night sky. The two moons, which were almost full, had met. According to the old warriors, the river level would drop faster when the two moons met. The change was obvious. The next day, when Xiao Xian came to the river, he saw that the river level had dropped a lot compared to yesterday. The river was also rushing downstream, as if something was sucking it downstream. This indeed confirmed the old warriors' words. They said that when the moon was full, the river would disappear. After the river level dropped, a lot of sand was exposed. Things could be seen moving in the sand. Sometimes an unknown bird would fly to the sand to peck, but sometimes a big mouth would jump out from the sand and bite the bird into the sand. Even if there was only sand left, it was still dangerous. No wonder the tribe didn't allow people to get close to that area. Not to mention the fact that the sand could easily sink in. Just the creatures hiding in the sand were enough to scare everyone. In the next few days, the two moons overlapped more and more, and the river flowed faster and faster. Now, standing next to the first fish fence, there was nothing but sand in front of their eyes. However, because the river level was falling, they could see the bottom of the river. In addition to the sand, there were also some strange-looking aquatic plants. Some were like corals, and some were like ordinary aquatic plants, but they could move on their own. Less than 10 meters from the first fish fence, there was a steep slope. More than 100 meters away, the river was very deep. It even made people feel like they were in a bottomless abyss. A river that allowed the river overlords to live freely must not be an ordinary river. It was just that they didn't know how deep the river was. Before the river disappeared, Xiao Xian would throw a piece of wood into the river and watch the wood flow downstream. Until it was out of their sight, none of the wood would sink. Obviously, some creatures that ate wood were still not in the river. As the time of the two moons was getting closer and closer, not only Caesar and Cha-Cha's symptoms were getting more and more obvious, but the night swallow creatures were also getting more and more rampant. Other people couldn't hear the night swallow sound, but Xiao Xian could. He could hear the night swallow creatures' excitement from their sounds. This bloodthirsty excitement made them overcome their fear of fire. Even if someone walked around at night with a torch, they would be attacked by the night swallow creatures. Many night swallow creatures were burned to death by the fire. However, the night swallow creatures only had eyes for their targets. Caesar would howl like the wolves in the forest these days. Last year, Caesar's symptoms were not as obvious as now, probably because he was still young, so he didn't howl. However, this year was different. At first, the patrolling warriors thought that wolves had entered the tribe, but when they came, they found out that it was Caesar. After all, Caesar didn't howl like that in the tribe before. Cha-Cha now nestled in its nest every day and didn't go anywhere, as if it felt that there was danger outside. If it wasn't for its increasing appetite, Xiao Xian would have thought that it was sick. As for the river at the foot of the mountain, the most intuitive feeling was that the river had gone far away, as if there had never been a river at the foot of the mountain. It had really disappeared, leaving behind only an abyss filled with mud and sand. Looking up, looking into the distance, there was nothing. There was no river, no other shore, and it was impossible to see where the border was. If it wasn't for the old warrior's warning, Xiao Xian would also have a psychological fear of the unknown because of such a strange phenomenon. On the day when the two moons completely overlapped, the night was as bright as day. After the two moons overlapped, it was as if the two moons had merged into one, becoming much bigger. The full moon in the night sky was like a huge pale eyeball overlooking everything on the ground. That night, Night Swallow danced wildly above the abyss where the river had disappeared, but it didn't fly back into the tribe. On the top of the mountain, the shaman stood beside the fire pit, chanting something. In the fire pit, there was originally a small flame, but now it had filled the entire fire pit. The high flame made the top of the mountain look like a torch, which also reduced the people's fear of such a phenomenon. The tribe was terrifyingly quiet. Except for the shaman on the top of the mountain, no one was standing outside. Xiao Xian had already been told to stay in the house for the night. Caesar was howling in the house, and Cha-Cha was curled up in its nest, wishing that it could bury its head in its wings. Even in the house, they could hear the vague roars of beasts from far away in the forest. It wasn't until the next day when the moon disappeared and the sun appeared that everyone came out again. Everyone's face showed a sense of relief. Although the full moon night didn't cause any substantial harm to them, there was an indescribable sense of fear. Only when they saw the flame on the top of the mountain through the crack of the window did they feel relieved. Now, after the full moon night, everyone seemed to be alive again. On the second night, when the two moons overlapped, although the moon still looked like one, it was not as big as last night. If you looked carefully, you could see some changes. The two moons were separating. When night fell, Xiao Xian felt that the ground under his feet was shaking, and the shaking was getting stronger and stronger. He had already learned more from old Ku, so he wasn't worried. He remembered that at this time last year in the cave, he thought there would be an earthquake. When he ran out of the cave, he was thrown back into the cave and laughed at by the other children. In the second half of the night, Xiao Xian was awakened by the shaking of the ground again. At the same time, there was a rumbling sound, like thousands of horses galloping. Just by listening to the sound, one could feel the momentum. The humidity in the air was increasing, and there was more and more water vapor. The wind was blowing fiercely outside the house. The gravel was lifted up and hit the wooden wall with a crackling sound. Xiao Xian even suspected that the wall of the wooden house would be penetrated by the gravel. The rumbling sound was getting louder and louder. The rumbling sound was accompanied by the violent shaking of the ground under his feet and the humid water vapor in the air. Obviously, just as the old warriors said, the falling river that disappeared was rising again. A moment later, whoo! The ear-piercing shriek was extremely clear amidst the rumbling of the surroundings. After the shriek, that sounded like a steam whistle, it was followed by the familiar muffled sound of thunder that covered the previous rumbling. It was like the declaration of a king, and all noise was under his command. And this was also like a signal to return. The creatures that disappeared during the rainy season all came back with the river. The rumbling sound gradually faded away, but the voices of the kings of the river were heard all night. It was believed that this night, many people in the tribe couldn't sleep, just like Xiao Xian. Chapter 95. In the morning, as soon as Xiao Xian walked out of the door, he saw Lang Jie running towards him, out of breath. "Xian, go to the river. Quick!" Lang Ga's face was red, not sure if it was because he was too tired or because he was too excited. "What's wrong?" Xiao Xian was confused. Fish fence. Fish fence." Lang Jie did not say much, but pulled Xiao Xian and ran towards the river. Early in the morning, Lang Jie went to the riverside to check on the fish fences. Based on his experience in the past few years, he certainly knew that there would be a big wave by the river last night, and thought that maybe something would be trapped there. But in the past 2 days, no one came to Xiao Xian because they were not calm. Today, when he couldn't wait to check the fish fence, he found that there were many aquatic creatures in the fish fence. Not only the big-headed piranhas, but also many other creatures that he had never seen before. At that time, Lang Jie was so excited that he checked the fish fences one by one. Later, he asked some patrolling soldiers to help him kill the fish that had almost escaped from the fish fences, but the fish trapped in the fish fences hadn't been killed yet. Because of his excitement, he only paid attention to the creatures in the fish fences. Lang Jie did not remember until now, so he immediately went to find Xiao Xian. Last night, the river rose again and returned to its original state, as if the abyss 2 days ago was just an illusion. When Xiao Xian came to the river, there were many people around the fish fence. Some of them were warriors who were responsible for patrolling the riverbank, and some were people who came from the Mountain Foot district to check out the situation. The children in the orphan cave were also craning their necks. People were curious, and they loved to watch the fun. At the same time, they also knew that as long as they set up such a fence at the right time, many good things could be stopped. When Xiao Xian came over, he saw a 1-meter-long clam, which had been pried open and chopped into pieces and put aside. I met that this morning, and it almost escaped. Fortunately, it didn't run very fast. Lang Jie chuckled. That thing's shell is really tight. It took me a lot of effort to pry it open. After pushing the crowd away, Lang Jie excitedly pointed at a fish fence and said to Xiao Xian, "Xian, look, there are a lot of preys here. A lot of prey that I've never seen before." As a hunter who had hunted for more than 10 years, Lang Jie was naturally just like the other warriors. He was interested in many new prey and had already started to dissect some in the morning. Xiao Xian jumped onto a stone pillar of a fish fence and glanced around. There was something in every fish fence, and most of them were big-headed piranhas, which were all lifted up by the waves. Lang Jie was not interested in those big-headed piranhas, so he only kept 2 of them as a token. After discussing with Xiao Xian, he gave the rest to the people from the Mountain Foot District and the children in the orphan cave. After all, Lang Jie was not short of food, and he didn't care about this kind of fish. Xiao Xian didn't need it either. Lang Jie held the long spear and poked the piranhas out of the fish fence one by one. Every time the spear went down, a fish would be pierced through. With a flick of the spearhead, the piranhas would be picked out and thrown aside. The onlookers only wanted to see if the fish were back. If they were back, they could continue to fish in the following days. They didn't expect that they could also get some benefits from watching the fun. When they saw Lang Jie throw the fish aside, they all rushed up to grab them. There was no water in the fish fence, and there were many dead fish inside. They all killed each other. The blood that flowed out when Xiao Xian poked the fish made the fish fight even more fiercely. Xiao Xian saw many strange fish. Some had long and narrow eyes, some had flat bodies like manta rays, and some were like puffer fish, which swelled into a big ball and pushed the other fish to the side. Xiao Xian even saw some shrimps and crabs, but they looked different from the shrimps and crabs he saw in his previous life. They were not as big as the other fish. Well, even if they were big shrimps and crabs, the fish fences couldn't trap them. Even if they were here yesterday, they would have already run away. How about this one? I think it's edible. Hey, this one is good. It looks fierce. Even if it's not edible, take it out and play with it. Look at that fish, it changed color with a poke. There were many onlookers around. Xiao Xian was watching when he heard Lang Jie shout, "I think I've seen this one before when I was hunting, but it didn't look like this." Xiao Xian looked over, and when he saw the creature Lang Jie was talking about, he was immediately amused. Oh, there's a turtle. To be exact, it looked more like a snapping turtle. When Xiao Xian looked over, it was biting the tail of a piranha next to it, directly tearing off a large piece of meat from the tail. Xiao Xian pointed to the snapping turtle with his spear and said to Lang Jie, "Keep that for me. I'll cook it when I get back." "Okay, I'll keep it for you." Lang Jie was overjoyed by the day's harvest, and he didn't care at all about this thing that he seemed to have seen before. He didn't care whether the fish he caught in the fish fence could be eaten or how much energy they could provide. He just felt a sense of accomplishment when he was surrounded by so many people, just like when he was walking on the path of glory for the first time. See, besides setting ground bows, I also know how to set traps to catch fish. Lang Jie was instructing people to run errands, and many people from the Mountain Foot District came to Lang Jie to learn from him. Lang Jie, who was standing on the stone pillar of the fish fence, had not stopped talking since he came here. Xiao Xian looked around, and he didn't want to steal the limelight from Lang Ga. Although these prey were shared by him and Lang Jie, he just wanted to see what other creatures there were in the river besides the piranhas. Xiao Xian let Lang Jie deal with the rest of the things in the fish fence, except for the turtle and a few fish. Xiao Xian squeezed out of the crowd and walked along the riverbank. In a small forest near the riverbank, many branches were broken, which should have been caused by last night. When the river rose, there should be big waves, and the riverbank was obviously washed away, so the things in the fish fence might have been blown away by the waves. There were no broken branches on the shore, nor were there any floating objects on the river. Xiao Xian walked to the forest, broke off a branch, and threw it into the river. The branch floated on the river, rising and falling with the waves. But after only one breath, the branch sank, and after a short while, a series of bubbles rose up like burps after a full meal. Those wood-eating insects also came back. During the rainy season, those insects might have followed the river beast downstream, or like the long-tailed frogs, they had other places to go. But after the full moon, the river rose, and they came back. If his speculation was correct, Xiao Xian felt that if there was a boat between the end of the rainy season and the full moon, they might be able to safely row in the river. During that time, the river seemed to be very turbulent, but it was only the big-headed piranhas that were active. This was the so-called, when the tiger is absent, the monkey is king. Without many natural enemies, it was no wonder that the piranhas were so active during that time and could fight for a long time with just a little bit of blood. Xiao Xian could not confirm whether the truth was as he speculated. Unfortunately, this was only once a year. If he wanted to confirm it again, he could only wait until next year's rainy season. Back in the wooden house, Xiao Xian wrote down today's observations and his own speculation in a secret notebook. After writing, he carefully rolled up the animal skin roll, tied it with a leather rope, and put it in a stone box. After sealing it, he moved the stone box to the corner under the bed. There were many things recorded in the animal skin roll, and Xiao Xian could not let other people in the tribe know about it. The information inside could cause panic and could also bring more unnecessary trouble. Now Xiao Xian's ability was limited, and he could not bear the possible consequences, so he could only hide it. I hope one day I can use it, Xiao Xian whispered. Was there only such a tribe in the world? Today, the people in the tribe, as well as their predecessors, had only come into contact with people in their own tribe. They had never seen other tribes. When they talked about other tribes, it was like people in his previous life talking about aliens. They were too distant and only existed in legends, but they had never come into contact with them. Where were the others? Who were they? Xiao Xian could see some of them from the murals in the stone room in the cave. But how could he meet people from other tribes? Maybe he had to go further through the dangerous forest, or maybe he just had to cross the river at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 96. After everything in the tribe returned to normal, Xiao Xian's life also returned to its original routine. Every 20 to 30 days, he would go out to hunt, then return to the tribe to make stoneware, learn how to make traps from Old Ku, and train Caesar and Cha-Cha. In the blink of an eye, more than half a year had passed. During this time, Xiao Xian expanded his wooden house. Under Old Ku's guidance, he added stone to make a wooden house, which was more solid than the original one. In terms of construction, Xiao Xian was indeed not as good as Old Ku and the others, so all he could do was to follow Old Ku's guidance. The newly built wooden house was twice as big as Old Ku's house. There was also a workshop for making stoneware. Old Ku's equipment had already been moved in. While Xiao Xian was making stoneware, Old Ku was sleeping in the room next door. He did not mind the noise and would wake up to instruct Xiao Xian. When Xiao Xian went out to hunt, Old Ku would sit by the window and bask in the sun in his spare time, besides making stoneware and helping to train Caesar and Cha-Cha. Every time Gu came over and saw Old Ku's comfortable appearance, he felt very emotional. A year ago, who would have thought that Old Ku's life would change like this? Cha-Cha grew very fast. It had been half a year since it hatched. The weak chick that could be held in one's hand was already almost as tall as Xiao Xian's shoulder when it raised its head. The previous wooden house was too small, so Caesar and Cha-Cha wanted to tear it down whenever they made a fuss. Therefore, during the expansion this time, Xiao Xian specially built 2 nests, one for the bird's nest and the other for the wolf's nest. Caesar's wolf's nest was near the gate, so Xiao Xian was completely raising it like a dog. As for Cha-Cha's nest, it was specially built on the roof of the house. With Cha-Cha, the night swallow would not come close to the house at night. Sometimes in the morning, Cha-Cha would wake up and find several night swallow corpses next to its nest. It did not eat. After pecking the night swallow to pieces, it would fly to the river to feed the fish. They would watch the big-headed piranhas fight over it. It was not only cruel, it also had a bad taste. Xiao Xian always thought that the baby bird needed external help to learn how to fly, such as pushing it down from a high place. But in fact, Xiao Xian did not need to worry about it all. Cha-Cha was restless when it first opened its eyes. When it could walk, it was even more troublesome. It often jumped off the stone table. By the time Xiao Xian realized what was going on, it could already fly very well. Moreover, it flew everywhere all day long, always provoking Caesar, chasing and pecking. When it saw that Caesar was serious, it would immediately fly high, which made Caesar so angry that he could only dig the ground. Once, when Xiao Xian came back from a hunt, he was summoned by the shaman. When he brought Cha-Cha to the shaman, he met Chief Ao, who was talking to the shaman. Ao said that Cha-Cha might be a bird similar to the giant mountain eagle. From what he said, it might be a close relative. Although it was not as big as the giant mountain eagle, it was still a bird of prey. Compared to other birds, it was still bigger. When Xiao Xian heard this, his first thought was, damn, no wonder it could eat so much. When it was a baby bird, it had a big appetite and was picky about its food. Now that it had grown up and could fly, it mostly relied on Xiao Xian to raise it. Occasionally, it would find some snacks to eat because Xiao Xian did not let it go too far. As for what the giant mountain eagle looked like, Xiao Xian had never seen it before. Most people in the tribe had never seen it before. It was said that there was an eagle mountain far away where the giant mountain eagle lived. Xiao Xian did not know what kind of bird Cha-Cha was, so he could only speculate based on what Ao said about the giant mountain eagle. If it was really a close relative, there must be some similarities. It was said that the giant mountain eagle was cold-blooded and cruel. Even if it was related by blood, it would still fight. However, when it came to fighting for territory, it would not fight to the death. As for birds or other birds that were not related by blood, it would fight until the end. After it won, it would try its best to kill the opponent. From what Xiao Xian observed, the Cha-Cha was really close to the giant mountain eagle. Their personalities were similar. The good thing was because it had been tamed since it was young, it was much more restrained. You found a good stone core again. Old Ku stood by the window and asked when he saw Xiao Xian come back from the training ground with 2 big stones. Yes, it feels good. I can make some spear darts. The fine stone leaves can also be made into stone needles for setting traps. After putting the 2 stones in the grinding workshop and drinking some water, Xiao Xian heard a few birds chirping in the sky outside. Walking out of the door, Xiao Xian looked at the birds circling in the sky above his head. He raised his hand and made a gesture. The birds chirped and flew away. Cha-Cha is going out to play again? Old Ku asked. Yes. Fortunately, it knows not to fly too far. It will come back when it's time. Xiao Xian said as he entered the house and sat down. It's still young. After it leaves the territory of the tribe, there will be many fierce birds in the sky. Cha-Cha is no match for them. Old Ku was a little worried. Don't worry. It's very smart. Xiao Xian said. He was not lying. Cha-Cha did have many tricks up its sleeves. It was much smarter than Caesar and rarely suffered losses. Looking at Caesar, who came back from the training ground with Xiao Xian, Old Ku was silent for a while. Then he asked, You've trained Caesar so well. Do you want to take it out in the future? Xiao Xian nodded and said, I want to take it hunting next year. Are you really going to take Caesar? Old Ku was not sure. Although Caesar had been trained better and better by Xiao Xian in the past year, and had learned how to cooperate with him, there were too many unpredictable factors in the real hunting ground. Any one of them could cause irreversible effects. It's just a plan. I heard from Uncle Mai that we might need to hunt some difficult prey next year. I suggested it to Uncle Mai, and he said he would think about it. But we have to let Caesar show off in front of them. Although Caesar could make the decisions in the hunting group, and the others would not directly refute him even if they had different opinions, Xiao Xian still wanted everyone to know about Caesar's ability. It would be a pity to not use such a helper. After hunting with the group for so many times, Xiao Xian also knew that some special prey were not easy to hunt. But with Caesar, who had a keen sense of smell, the result would be different. Now Caesar had no problem in speed, but Xiao Xian was still training its reflexes and adaptability. Caesar was about the size of a wolf in the forest, but it did not have a murderous aura. No one in the tribe was afraid of it now. Since Xiao Xian had already made his decision, Old Ku did not intend to interfere. Even if you don't train it well now, You'll have more time to train it in the winter when the hunting stops. Winter. Xiao Xian looked at a few ordinary-looking leaves on the wooden shelf and said, I can't be idle in the winter. He wanted to learn some knowledge about herbs from the shaman, and he had mentioned it when the shaman talked to him alone. He did not know if this skill could be taught, so he only tentatively and euphemistically mentioned it once, and the shaman agreed. Many people in the advanced group knew about the use of herbs, but they did not know much about it. The other people in the tribe did not seem to have mentioned similar problems. They probably thought that as long as they believed in the shaman, they could ask the shaman for help when they needed. They did not need to spend time to learn. Or they thought that only the shaman could learn such profound skills, and no one else could do it. When Xiao Xian proposed to learn about herbs, the shaman was very happy. However, Xiao Xian did not have much time on weekdays, so the shaman asked him to go up the mountain in the winter when the hunting stopped. Therefore, Xiao Xian said that winter would be busy too. Chapter 97. With the end of the last hunting trip, the temperature gradually dropped. Xiao Xian dragged his last prey of the year down from the top of the mountain. The weather was getting colder. Winter would come in about 30 days. They put some food in the tribe's ice cave and brought the rest down the mountain. The other hunting team was ready to go out, so they had to hurry up. When they came back, winter would officially come. Old Kum met his friends on the mountain, and Caesar stayed there to carry him down the mountain. As for Cha-Cha, Xiao Xian saw it flying in the sky when he returned to the tribe. After the sword cleansing ceremony, it was nowhere to be seen. As soon as Xiao Xian entered the house, he saw an eagle lying on the stone table. The eagle's head was hanging on the edge of the table, motionless. Xiao Xian was so scared that he thought the eagle's head was broken. Fortunately, the eagle quickly turned over and jumped down from the stone table. When it flapped its wings, several wooden chairs around it were knocked over. Even after growing up, Cha-Cha still retained his childhood habits. Whenever he had nothing to do, he would lie on the stone table and throw everything on the table to the ground. Xiao Xian whipped him several times, but he still didn't change. Looking at the eagle squeezing over, Xiao Xian cut a piece of meat and threw it over, "Go out and eat." Even though the house had been expanded, it could not bear the eagle flapping its wings in the house. After Cha-Cha left with the meat in its mouth, Xiao Xian planned to process the meat and marinate it. He looked at the stone jar in the kitchen and found it was full. The kitchen was a room specially set aside by Xiao Xian. There was a simple stone stove in it, which was more convenient than a stone pot. Xiao Xian remembered there was an empty stone jar in the corner, so he walked over to take a look. There was an old stone vat, which was brought here by old Ko. It was quite old, and the mouth of the vat was cracked. It could not hold much water, so it was put here temporarily to store something else. There was a wooden lid on top of the stone vat. It had not been touched for some time, so it was covered with a layer of dust. Xiao Xian opened the wooden lid and looked inside. He saw a creature the size of a wash basin sitting quietly inside. There were many jagged thorns on its back. The water in the stone tank only slightly covered its back. Seeing it, Xiao Xian remembered. This turtle was caught in the fish fence during the high tide of the 2 moons. Xiao Xian asked Lang Jie to keep it for him to stew. Later, when Lang Jie brought it over, Xiao Xian directly threw it into the stone vat in old Ku's house. Later on, due to hunting, building a house, moving, and a series of other things, it was put aside. Xiao Xian had almost forgotten about it, and old Ku had not eaten it either. It had been put aside until now. It was already the end of the year. Almost half a year had passed, but it had not starved to death. Probably because it was starving, it did not have much energy. Xiao Xian poked it twice with a wooden stick, but it only moved a little. Should I stew it today? Xiao Xian thought. Just as he was thinking about whether to stew it today or a few days later, old Ku came back with Caesar. Seeing old Ku come in, Xiao Xian asked, "Do you think we should eat it today or a few days later?" "Oh, it's still here," old Ku said in surprise. When Lang Jie sent the turtle over, he did not say that Xiao Xian wanted to kill it and eat it. In addition, Caesar and Cha-Cha were in front of him, so old Ku thought that Xiao Xian wanted to keep it for fun. After all, he already had 2, so it would not be strange to have one more. Therefore, after old Ko put it in the stone vat, he only added some water to it from time to time and threw some meat scraps into it when he was free. He thought that Xiao Xian would care about it, but he didn't know that Xiao Xian had already forgotten about it. Later, after the house was expanded and moved over, old Ku asked about the turtle again. Only then did he know that Xiao Xian had no intention of keeping it. He only kept it as food, so he did not continue to feed it. There was a difference in treatment between food and pets. In the past, old Ku thought that pets were just spare food. Later, after spending a long time with Caesar and Cha-Cha, he developed some feelings for them. Every day, Caesar would carry him everywhere, so naturally, he did not want to let Caesar starve. However, food was different. In the minds of the tribesmen, since it was food, why should they waste food to feed it? He put it aside until now. Yes, this was caught when the river rose after the full moon. I asked Lang Jie to cook it for me, but I forgot about it when I got busy. Xiao Xian said, I haven't fed it for a long time, but it's still alive. Old Ku sighed. After all, they did not lack food. They did not even finish the food in the previous stone vats, so they did not pay attention to the stone vat in the corner. This kind of creature can withstand hunger, has a long life, and does not die easily, Xiao Xian said as he threw a piece of freshly cut meat into the vat. The originally listless turtle immediately bit the meat. When it bit the meat with its eagle beak, because it used too much force, it pecked the wall of the stone vat, making a dong sound. Xiao Xian looked at the inner wall of the stone vat and found that there were all kinds of scratches and bite marks. If it was not for the thickness of the stone vat, it would have been pecked through. Perhaps most of the cracks on the stone vat were due to the turtle. Why don't we eat it today? Xiao Xian turned to ask old Ku, but found that old Ku was staring at the turtle in the stone vat, thinking about something. Xian, old Ku stared at the turtle and said, What? Didn't you say that you wanted to go to the mountain to learn from the shaman in winter? Old Ku asked. That's my plan, and the shaman agreed. Xiao Xian said, You can offer it to the shaman. Old Ku raised his finger and pointed at the turtle in the stone vat that was active again after eating the meat. Offer it to the shaman? The shaman did not lack food, so why would he care about this? But soon, Xiao Xian also reacted. Old Ku thought that the turtle had a good meaning. Just like what Xiao Xian said, longevity and immortality. Xiao Xian did not know what the turtle meant here, but in his previous life, many people did regard the turtle as a symbol of longevity and immortality. Moreover, this turtle really had a strong vitality. After leaving it here for so long, it was so hungry that it did not even have the strength to peck at the vat. Otherwise, such a stone vat would not be able to trap it. Thinking about it, when he caught it, the Lang Jie tortured the prey trapped in the fish fence for a while. Later, when he brought it here, he starved it for a long time. For nearly half a year, it did not eat much, but it still stubbornly survived. This made old Ku believe in the meaning of longevity and immortality that Xiao Xian said. People in the tribe always thought that things with good meanings should be offered to people they respected. Old Ku was one of them. In addition, Xiao Xian wanted to learn from the shaman, which was a kind of honor in his eyes. It was natural to offer this turtle that symbolized longevity and immortality to the shaman. Seeing that old Ku was so insistent, Xiao Xian did not force him to eat it. After all, he was not short of food. Okay, next time I go up the mountain to find the shaman, I will bring it with me, Xiao Xian answered. Hearing this, old Ku smiled. Before that, you have to take good care of it. Old Ku thought that the things offered to the shaman must be in the best condition, or they would not be able to show their sincerity. So after 10 days of good food and drinks, Xiao Xian held the turtle's back with both hands and lifted it up the mountain with its belly facing out. On the mountain, the shaman was sitting in the stone house, writing something on a roll of animal skin with a brush made from animal hair. When he heard that Xiao Xian came to offer food, he was curious. After all, Xiao Xian's hunting team had returned to the tribe for so many days. What could they offer now? Putting down the brush, the shaman raised his head and was about to say something when he saw the turtle in Xiao Xian's hand. The shaman's old face twitched, and he swallowed back the words he was about to say. In the past, when other people in the tribe came to offer food, they would cut the meat and clean it up. However, when it came to Xiao Xian, he directly brought a turtle over. It was still alive. This turtle had a hooked beak, and there were bits of wood around its mouth. Obviously, this turtle was very destructive. When it was brought in by Xiao Xian, it had a murderous look on its face, as if it wanted to bite everything it saw. Plus 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 equals sorry. This is the last chapter for tonight. I will update earlier tomorrow, and will continue to update on the weekend. Chapter 98. What are you? The shamaness looked at Xiao Xian. She didn't know what to say. He hadn't received a living creature for many years. It's for you. Xiao Xian put the tortoise on the ground next to him. After thinking for a while, he put it upside down. Every time the tortoise was about to turn over, he would push it back with his hand. I brought it here and asked when I can start learning herbs from you, Xiao Xian said. The shaman looked away from the tortoise, thought for a while, and said, You go up the mountain in 10 days. During this time, he still had some things to deal with and several paintings to draw, so he couldn't spare any time. Okay, I'll come back in 10 days. Seeing that the shaman still had a lot of empty animal skins to draw on, Xiao Xian knew that the shaman had a lot of things to do, so he didn't say anything more. He bowed and left. As for the tortoise, the shaman had someone watching over it, so it couldn't hurt anyone. After Xiao Xian left, the shaman quietly looked at the tortoise that had turned over on the ground next to him. The tortoise used to be murderous, but now it wasn't as aggressive as it was in Xiao Xian's house. It just opened its beak slightly, looking at the shaman, but didn't bite him. After staring at the tortoise for a while, the shaman called in the guard outside and asked him to move the tortoise to another place. When Xiao Xian returned home, Old Ku was waiting at the door, looking very nervous. People in the tribe cared about the shaman very much, and Old Ku also wanted to know if the shaman would be satisfied with the offerings. How is it? Does the shaman like it? Before Xiao Xian entered the door, Old Ku hurriedly asked. He grabbed the crutch so hard that his blue veins bulged, and the crutch almost broke. Xiao Xian recalled the shaman's expression at that time and said he should be satisfied. The shaman asked me to go up the mountain in 10 days. Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Old Ku breathed a sigh of relief. Since the shaman had asked Xiao Xian to go to the mountain, it meant that he wasn't dissatisfied. In fact, Xiao Xian felt that Old Ku's worries were unnecessary. After interacting with the shaman for a long time, Xiao Xian could tell that the shaman was not an inflexible old antique. He would not change his attitude toward people just because he liked the gifts offered. Since you will go up the mountain in 10 days, before that, you can go to the hunting group to learn more about herbs and plants. By then, you can satisfy the shaman. Old Ku wanted to go to some of his former comrades, but most of the people he knew who knew about herbs and plants were in another hunting group and had already gone out. When the hunting group came back, Xiao Xian had already gone up the mountain. Generally speaking, in a year, the activity of the wild beasts in the forest would be in a wave shape and would reach its peak during the full moon period. After the full moon period, the activity of the wild beasts in the forest would gradually decrease. At the end of the year, some of the prey would hide and prepare for hibernation. In order to ensure enough food in the winter, the hunting team would go out for hunting longer than before and after the full moon period. Therefore, even after 20 days, the hunting team might not come back immediately. After Xiao Xian went up the mountain, he would have to wait for another 3 or 4 days for the hunting team to come back. If there were other troubles, it might take longer. I can't help you with herbs. Old Ku could not remember the knowledge about herbs that he had learned in the past. He was afraid that he would embarrass Xiao Xian in front of the shaman if he taught him the wrong things. After all, he was the shaman. However, Xiao Xian was not as nervous and anxious as Old Ku. He did what he should do, such as making stoneware, taking Caesar and Cha-Cha to the training ground, and practicing the traps and lassos that he had just learned. In this season, many trees on the hills of the training ground bore fruits. Many people went to pick them, and many fruits took a short time to ripen. One day, they looked like peanut-sized green fruits, but the next day, they would be as big as apples, and their color would change. If they were not picked at this time, the fruit would rot in a day. Therefore, many people went to the training ground to pick fruits every day, but most of them were from the Mountain Foot District. After all, they had less food, and it was always good to have more food. Finally, the day came. Before Xiao Xian went up the mountain again, Old Ku reminded him again and again not to make the shaman angry. What a great honor it was to learn from the shaman. No matter what he thought, Xiao Xian nodded seriously. Don't worry. Old Ku was speechless. Old Ku was relieved at first, but when he heard Xiao Xian's words, he became worried again. Looking at Xiao Xian's back, Old Ku stood there worried. Xiao Xian did not bring Caesar up the mountain, but Cha-Cha followed them all the way to the top. When they came to the stone house where the shaman talked to people, Xiao Xian saw the two soldiers in charge of guarding the house staring at the sky. The two soldiers naturally knew the eagle hovering in the sky. After all, it was brought to the shaman when it was very young, and it was blessed by the shaman, so no one dared to throw it to kill it. Xiao Xian made a gesture to the sky, and Cha-Cha chirped and flew back down the mountain. It was not the first time that the two soldiers saw Xiao Xian do this, but every time they saw it, they could not help but be surprised and envious. They had never thought that a bird that was so aggressive in the forest could be so obedient. Because of this, their attitude toward Xiao Xian was much better than the people who lived at the foot of the mountain. When they saw Xiao Xian coming, they would smile every time. Except for the first few times, Xiao Xian did not need to show his pattern plate now. He could walk directly into the house, and no one would stop him. The shaman was still arranging the animal skin rolls. Xiao Xian only glanced at them in a hurry, but he could not understand them. They seemed to be drawings, but they were too abstract. They were much simpler than the drawings on the animal skin rolls in other people's hands and the murals in the cave. They looked like symbols, each with only 1 or 2 strokes, but the shaman drew each stroke very slowly, as if it took a lot of effort to complete each stroke. Xiao Xian did not disturb him and sat down on the side. After about 5 minutes, the shaman put down the brush, took a deep breath, and looked at Xiao Xian with a faint smile. I have already told Gu Zhe. You can go directly to the medicine house. She will tell you what to do. Xiao Xian did not know who Gu Zhe was, but he probably was the shaman's apprentice. Looking at the shaman's current situation, he could not leave. He had only drawn 1/3 of the animal skin roll, and it was not good to stop halfway. Xiao Xian understood that the shaman could not leave now. Okay, then I will go first, Xiao Xian said. The medicine house was where the shaman used to mix herbs. Among the many houses near the top of the mountain, there were 4 at the top. They were the stone house where the shaman summoned people, the stone house where the chief summoned people, the stone house where the higher-ups of the tribe met people, and the medicine house. These 4 houses were in 4 directions. If 2 opposite stone houses were connected, they would form a crisscrossing 10. It was said that these 4 houses were connected to the fire pit and could be used as a greenhouse in winter. As for how to connect them, that was the power of the shaman and the fire seed. On normal days, except for the seriously ill and the wounded sent by the hunting team, no one else was allowed to get close to the medicine house. Xiao Xian only knew the specific location of the medicine house, but he had never entered it. There was also a guard in front of the medicine house. After Xiao Xian handed over the pattern plate, the guard let him in. Obviously, the shaman had already informed him. He could smell the herbs from far away, and the smell was even stronger when he got closer. Xiao Xian lifted the animal skin curtain of the medicine house and walked in. What came into view was a large square stone table placed there. At this moment, a little girl who didn't look very old was busy in front of the square table. The sleeves of the beast skin coat she was wearing only reached her elbows, and the beast skin pants she was wearing did not reach her ankles. At this moment, she was barefooted, walking on the uneven but carefully hammered ground. She walked along the stone table, handling the herbs that were placed all over the table. Behind her, a turtle, which Xiao Xian was very familiar with, was slowly following her. Every step she took, the turtle followed her. Chapter 99. Xiao Xian put down the animal skin curtain and said, "Hello, my name is Xian. The shaman asked me to come here to learn." The person who was processing the herbs on the stone plate raised her head and looked at Xiao Xian. She smiled and said, I'm Guize. Although she had a smile on her face, Xiaoxian didn't think she was friendly or malicious. She was just like the shamaness, smiling faintly at everyone. She looked friendly, but that was just a facade. She was really taught by the shaman. Even her smile was the same. Compared to other people who had awakened their totemic power, Guize was relatively thin and weak. After all, in the tribe, no matter if it was a boy or a girl, after awakening their totemic power, their physique would be strengthened a lot, and they would look stronger. The temperature in the room was a little higher than outside. Just like what people in the tribe said, this room was connected to the fire pit. Xiaoxian did not know how the heat was transmitted. After all, there were no suspicious objects around the room. Walking to the stone table, Xiaoxian asked, "What I need to do first?" Putting down the stone plate in his hand, Guize thought for a while and said, "You can watch from the side and see what I'm going to do." Okay. Xiaoxian had no objection. He wanted to observe first. He still did not know how to process the herbs here. The plants here were too strange, but similar to what Xiaoxian learned in his previous life, most of these medicinal plants needed to be selected and processed. Some parts of the same plant could be used to save people, while some could be used to poison others. Up to now, Xiaoxian only knew a few basic ways to use the herbs he saw when he went out with the hunting team. He also learned a little about harvesting when he followed the advanced group. For example, when was the best time to harvest, which plants could be harvested from the ground, which needed to be uprooted, and some could only be harvested when flowering. As for now, the first thing he needed to know was how to select the plants after they were delivered here. Guize was doing the same thing now, and he had already processed more than half of the plants. After all, it had been 20 days since the last hunting team came back, and the plants that could not be kept for a long time had already been processed, and the plants that could be kept for a long time were processed last. Xiaoxian walked over and stood beside Guize, watching her every step carefully. When the turtle saw Xiaoxian approaching, it bit Xiaoxian's leg. Xiaoxian's line of sight had been fixed on Guize's actions as he processed the herbs. He did not look at the tortoise, but his hanging hand moved quickly. He drew out his stone knife and slapped the back of the knife at the tortoise's beak that looked like an eagle's hook. "Ha!" The tortoise shook its head after being slapped. It still looked at Xiaoxian with disdain. It probably remembered how Xiaoxian treated it in the past. But then, to Xiaoxian's surprise, the tortoise did not bite him again. It was completely different from when they were in the stone vat at the foot of the mountain, when it could not wait to kill a target as soon as it saw one. Xiaoxian did not understand. Why did the tortoise, which used to love biting people, settle down when it came here? Was it because of the witch? He did not understand. Anyway, the tortoise did not pester and bite people anymore, which saved Xiaoxian a lot of trouble. It was almost winter, and the temperature had dropped a little. If he used the standard of pet tortoises in his previous life, the tortoise's appetite and activity should have been greatly reduced. But now, this weird-looking tortoise with even weirder attributes had completely overturned Xiaoxian's previous understanding of it. The tortoise looked energetic, much livelier than when it was thrown into the water vat by Xiaoxian 10 days ago. Although it did not crawl fast, the tortoise's steps were domineering. Few of the new plants brought back by the hunting team can be eaten directly. Most of them have dirt and other impurities in them. Guize explained some basic knowledge to Xiaoxian when he was processing the herbs in the stone plate. Newly brought back plants had a lot of dirt and other impurities in them, and some of them also had a high water content. If they were not processed in time, they would also go through qualitative changes. Maybe they would grow moldy like ordinary plants, or maybe they would go through other changes. Therefore, the plants brought back by the advanced group were directly sent here, and the medicine house would immediately process the ones that were most likely to go through qualitative changes. After the initial washing of the plants, we need to remove the dirt and sort them out. Then we need to remove the non-medicinal parts. For example, the outer shell of this fruit must be removed. Its outer shell can make people have diarrhea. Guize said, obviously, this kind of fruit was very poisonous. It could make people in the tribe, who were physically strong, suffer from severe diarrhea, and even urinate and defecate. Even warriors could not stand it. Xiao Xian watched Gui Zhe skillfully cut open the hard outer shell of the fruit with a sharpened stone knife. He peeled off the outer shell of the fruit with long hairs like whiskers, but the translucent and solidified flesh inside was not damaged at all. Obviously, Gui Zhe was very familiar with this kind of treatment. Xiao Xian wanted to ask what to do with the poisonous outer shell of the fruit, but before he could ask, he saw Gui Zhe throw the outer shell into the tortoise's open mouth. Xiao Xian was speechless. What the hell? Wasn't it poisonous? One threw it away calmly, while the other could not wait to eat it. Xiao Xian was stunned. Did the shaman send the tortoise here just to be a lab rat? Or a trash can to dispose of waste? Gui Zhe did not notice Xiao Xian's strange behavior. Because she wanted to demonstrate to Xiao Xian, she did not continue to deal with the same thing. Instead, she walked to another stone plate and picked up a plant that looked like a withered leaf. She continued, not every kind of fruit needs to be removed like the fruit. For example, you need to remove the stalk. The stalk will make people's hands and feet numb. Xiao Xian watched as she skillfully peeled off the stalk, then threw all the peeled leaves into the tortoise's mouth again. Xiao Xian was speechless. Looking at the tortoise chewing with its beak, Xiao Xian thought to himself, severe diarrhea? Hands and feet numb. It's all fed to the tortoise. Moreover, the tortoise was fine after eating it. These are all harmful. Why are you still feeding it? Xiao Xian asked. When he gave the tortoise to the shaman, he thought that the shaman would stew it directly. He did not expect it to be sent here, and it was so obedient. What surprised Xiao Xian the most was that Gui Zhe actually cut off the parts of the plant that were identified as harmful to people and fed them to the tortoise. The tortoise even ate it big mouthfuls. The shaman said that you could try to feed it some. Gui Zhe did not feel that there was anything wrong. Since the shaman said it, it must be correct. She just had to carry it out. Sure enough, it was an undead species. Xiao Xian had a new understanding of the strange species in this place. He followed Gui Zhe around the stone table. After looking at the preliminary treatment methods for many kinds of plants, Gui Zhe continued with her task. After looking for a while, Xiao Xian asked, is there any relevant information, such as animal skin scrolls? I could take a look first. After all, the advanced group had spent a lot of effort to find these plants. They couldn't let a newbie like Xiao Xian operate them. Even if the steps were very simple, they couldn't let him operate them. Unless the shamaness agreed, Gui Zhe couldn't make this decision. Xiao Xian could not help even if he wanted to. Gui Zhe thought about it and felt that it was right. She also began to read the drawings and related records on the animal skin scrolls very early. After she understood the basic knowledge, she began to learn from the shaman. However, compared to Xiao Xian, she had someone to explain to her when she read the animal skin scrolls. She was willing to explain to Xiao Xian, but unfortunately, there were still a lot of plants that had not been processed. Gui Zhe pointed to a small stone table in the corner where there were many animal skin scrolls. She said, they're all over there. You can read them. Then I will go first. You can continue. I will ask you later if I don't understand. Xiao Xian came to the stone table. Some of the animal skin scrolls on the table looked old, but the one on the side was relatively new. It should have been made this year. Xiao Xian first took a slightly old animal skin scroll and opened it to have a look. There were several drawings of plants, and there was a brief description next to them. However, it was not detailed, and the drawings were not detailed. How to identify them? In the eyes of a layman, looking at these drawings, more than 4 out of 10 would feel that they looked the same. Weren't they all leaves, roots, barks, seeds, and so on? They all looked the same. There was only one color, the drawing style was rough, and the annotations were too thin. There was no real object to compare with, and no one to explain. Just by looking at these animal skin scrolls, one could not understand much. After flipping through a few old animal skin scrolls, Xiao Xian found that they were all similar in style. Then he set his eyes on the newer one. The quality of the animal skin scroll looked much better than the other scrolls. After opening the slightly new animal skin scroll and seeing the contents, Xiao Xian was stunned. If the previous scrolls were rough, then the drawings on this one were extremely simple. Just like the symbols drawn by the shaman today, no one could understand what these drawings were. Staring at a drawing that looked like a blob of ink, Xiao Xian wondered if this was a lump of paint that fell from the shaman's brush when he was drawing. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, Xiao Xian seemed to see a round brown fruit gradually emerge from the drawing. Chapter 100. Xiao Xian was startled. He moved his eyes away and looked at the animal skin roll again. It was still the same symbols. However, when he stared at the ink blob for a while, the brown fruit appeared again. It was very clear, as if a real object was placed in front of his eyes. Even the wrinkles on the fruit skin could not be seen in detail. What was going on? In the past, Xiao Xian would only see those illusionary pictures in front of his eyes when he was in danger or in a special environment. But now, he was not in danger, and he did not encounter any special terrain like the Green Thief. He was just staying in this medicine house. If the illusionary pictures were because of this special place, why did they only appear now after so long? This animal skin roll was not ordinary. Xiao Xian no longer stared at the ink blob. Instead, he changed the picture and continued to stare at it. Soon, Xiao Xian found that the other pictures were similar to the ink blob. After staring for a while, a picture of a real object would gradually appear on the drawings. It was very clear. Xiao Xian saw a lot of herbs in this animal skin roll. Among them were the wind ball and the green thief that he had found when he went out with the advanced group this year. There were also many other strange-looking herbs. What surprised Xiao Xian the most was that the wind ball and the green thief had some traces because of the traps. Xiao Xian had set up the traps himself and caught these two herbs. Naturally, he could recognize them at a glance. The pictures in this animal skin roll were exactly the same as the ones in Xiao Xian's memory. They were the real objects reproduced. Looking at the other pictures, there were not only pictures of plants, but also of animals. On this animal skin scroll, the first half of the scroll was drawn with plant medicinal materials, while the second half was drawn with animal medicinal materials. However, no matter which type it was, there was only a simple symbol, and there was no description of how to obtain these finished products. There were many animal herbs. Xiao Xian could only see the shape of the finished products, but he could not tell which part of which animal these finished products were. The annotations on the side were limited, so it was impossible to understand it in detail. Xiao Xian flipped through the rest of the animal skin scrolls on the stone table. Except for the one in his hand, the rest of the animal skin scrolls were very ordinary. It could be seen that the artist had tried his best to draw the objects as clearly as possible, but his drawing skills were limited. Xiao Xian could not see the images of the objects in these drawings. Compared to the reproduction of the objects, the difference was huge. Xiao Xian recalled the time when he went to the shaman's place and saw the shaman's drawings. At first glance, those drawings looked very simple, but every stroke seemed to be extremely difficult. Now, thinking about the animal skin scroll in his hand, Xiao Xian had a guess in his heart. When Gui Zhe finished processing the herbs in a stone plate, Xiao Xian took the special animal skin scroll and asked, "Was this scroll written by the shaman himself?" Gui Zhe looked sideways and saw the animal skin scroll in Xiao Xian's hand. Her originally calm face suddenly became nervous. She quickly walked over and looked carefully. After confirming that the animal skin scroll was not damaged, she breathed a sigh of relief. She originally wanted to take the animal skin scroll from Xiao Xian's hand and put it away to avoid any damage. However, thinking that the shaman had personally agreed to let Xiao Xian come to learn, she hesitated for a moment and withdrew her hand. This is indeed written by the shaman himself. This is the one he wrote this year. You, be careful when you read it. Don't break it. Gui Zhe stared at the animal skin scroll in Xiao Xian's hand and said seriously, "Every time the shaman comes, he will look through it. If he breaks it, he will be angry." Xiao Xian naturally knew how important the shaman was to the people in the tribe. Nodding, Xiao Xian replied, "I know. I will be careful. By the way, have you read this too?" Xiao Xian raised the animal skin scroll in his hand and asked. Gui Zhe heard this and smiled. Her eyes were filled with unconcealed reverence. She said, This was written by the shaman himself. Only he can read it. No one else can understand it. She thought that Xiao Xian was the same as her, who couldn't understand what was written on the animal skin roll. She had seen similar animal skin rolls when she first entered the medicine house. However, she heard that this kind of animal skin roll belonged to the shaman volume, which was completely different from ordinary animal skin rolls. Wu roll. Only the shaman can understand it. So, if you can't understand this, you should change to other animal skin scrolls. After saying this, Guizhe went back to the big stone table to process the herbs. There were still several stone plates on the table that needed to be processed. Moreover, the hunting team would be back soon, so the herbs needed to be mixed as soon as possible. She did not have much time to talk to Xiao Xian. After Guizhe left, Xiao Xian looked down at the animal skin scroll in his hand and whispered, "Wu roll." Guizhe misunderstood him, but he did not explain. It was even more impossible for him to say to Guizhe, "Ah, I'm sorry, but I can understand it." Wu roll. Only the shaman can understand it. Who said that? Xiao Xian shook his head and moved a wooden chair over. He spread the animal skin scroll on the small stone table and continued to look at the drawings. He had only roughly glanced at a few of them, and there were many others that he had not seen yet. Even if the annotations were not clear, he could at least remember them. Maybe he would encounter them when he went hunting in the future. Since it was called Wu roll, it must be because of the shaman. The drawings made by the shaman were different from those made by others. The shaman might have used some special ability to draw his consciousness into the drawings. Even though the drawings looked simple, there were many secrets hidden in them. If anyone could understand these drawings, why would Ta and the other hunters have other drawings? The drawings in the hands of the two hunting team leaders were, of course, drawn separately so that they could be understood. Xiao Xian left the medicine house in the afternoon. He could not spend the night there. Not long after Xiao Xian left, the shaman came to the medicine house. Hearing Guizhe respectfully report the results of the processing of the herbs in the afternoon, the shaman smiled and said, "Very good. Thank you for your hard work." The old man and the young man had the same expression on their faces, but Guizhe's face was filled with joy because of the shaman's compliment. After asking about the herbs, the shaman asked again, "How was Xian's performance today?" "I taught him how to process the herbs, and then he was reading the animal skin scroll." Guizhe briefly told the shaman what had happened today and pointed to the small stone table. "He also looked at your animal skin scroll. I guess he was just like me, confused." The shaman's expression changed slightly, but it was too fast for Guizhe to notice. "How long did he look at that animal skin scroll?" asked the shaman. "Almost half a day." He even yawned. Guizhe did not say the second part, for he was afraid that the shaman would be angry. The shaman was silent for a while, and then said slowly, "Don't mind him. You go about your business. The hunting team will be back soon. Prepare 3 portions of the herbs we need." "Yes." The next day, Xiao Xian came to the medicine house again. Guizhe was still busy at the big stone table. Xiao Xian stood aside and watched him for a while. He helped to move things down and read the preliminary processing methods of some new herbs. After reading all of them, he turned to other places. When he glanced at the small stone table where the animal skin scroll was placed, he paused. He found that there was another animal skin scroll on the table. Judging from the quality of the animal skin scroll, it was very similar to the one from the Wu roll yesterday. Xiao Xian picked up the new animal skin scroll and opened it. What came into his eyes was indeed the same as the one from the Wu roll yesterday. However, this animal skin scroll did not contain a single image, but a series of images. What was recorded on this animal skin scroll was the processing methods for 8 commonly used medicinal plants. From selecting, cutting, steaming, drying, and storing, there were all descriptions. Looking at these pictures, Xiao Xian felt as if he was looking at a pair of experienced hands, demonstrating a series of processes in front of him. After a series of rune images, there were also annotations. The images and the words were very clear and profound. Chapter 101. Not only that day, but every day after that. Every time Xiao Xian went up the mountain to the medicine house, he would find a new set of Wu roll on the small stone table in the corner. From the beginning of the collection and processing of the basic plants, to how to lure the animal herbs, how to capture them, how to process them, and how to collect and prepare the rare herbs. All of these were recorded on the animal skin roll in the form of Wu roll. Every time Xiao Xian looked at it, he could see the real scenes. Because the pictures were all continuous instead of separate ones, when he looked at them together, he could see different scenes. Sometimes Xiao Xian even had a feeling that he was doing it himself. He could feel the touch, the strength, and so on more or less. The Wu roll was very precious. Since the shaman took it out, obviously he already knew that Xiao Xian could understand it. The shaman. Many things could not be hidden from him, and the extra Wu roll on the stone table made Xiao Xian understand the shaman's attitude. One day, when Xiao Xian was looking at a Wu roll in the corner, someone ran in and said, "Guize, the hunting team is back. The shaman wants you to go there." There was a room next to the medicine house, which was used to treat the wounded. Every time the hunting team sent the wounded back, they would directly send them there. It was close to the medicine house, so they could just go there and get whatever herbs they needed, saving time. The Guize did not waste any time. He put down what he was doing and went there. As for Xiao Xian, he was not allowed to go in. Without permission, no one was allowed to go in case they would interfere with the treatment. Xiao Xian felt a little regretful. He wanted to see how the shaman treated the wounded, but he was stopped, so he could only sit in the medicine house. Guize went out for a while and ran back to the medicine house. She took a few packets of medicine that had already been wrapped. Half a minute later, she hurriedly ran back. Bitter sandroot, 7 forks, palmer fruit, heart-piercing stem. Guize murmured the names of the herbs as she took out some herbs from the stone jars or wooden boxes that contained the finished products. Seeing her in such a hurry, Xiao Xian guessed that the number of wounded warriors sent by the hunting team was more than expected, and the herbs she had prepared were not ready. The herbs she had just taken were not enough, so she had to make some on the spot. There was no need for a scale. Guize only needed to casually grab it with his hand, and the dosage of the same medicine was almost the same. This was the conclusion that Xiao Xian had come to after watching from the sidelines for the past few days. This kind of kung fu was not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. Perhaps the shaman had been training Guize since a long time ago. Everyone in the tribe thought that the medicine in the bag was made by the shaman himself, but now it seemed that many of them were made by the Guize. "Do you need help?" Xiao Xian asked. Guize was going to refuse, but after thinking for a while, he nodded. However, he did not let Xiao Xian deal with the herbs directly, but only asked him to pass the things to man. What happened? Not enough medicine. How many people were injured this time? Xiao Xian asked. 9 were injured. Guize said. Those who were sent back were naturally heavily injured. 9 heavily injured people were indeed more than the usual number of injured people. However, fortunately, no one died. The heart-piercing stem is not enough. Help me bring the box with the heart-piercing stem. Guize said hurriedly. Okay. Xiao Xian had already memorized the locations of the herbs, so he did not need to be reminded by Guize. He wanted to bring a big wooden box. The heart-piercing stem was a kind of herb that grew on the greenland. It was only as thick as a little finger with a thin layer of skin on the outside. There was a thin black, thread-like core in the center of the stem. The skin could not be used as medicine, and the black core in the middle was poisonous. Therefore, when dealing with the heart-piercing stem, in addition to peeling off the skin, the black core in the middle also had to be removed. Although he was in a hurry, Guize's movements were still orderly. However, he was still too slow. The heart-piercing stem was not easy to deal with, and it was very time-consuming. Xiao Xian had seen her deal with it, and each stem took at least half an hour. Because of this, Guize was so anxious that his face was sweating. He held the knife steadily and faster, but it was not as perfect as usual. After all, he was going to save people now. He would rather spend more medicine to deal with the heart-piercing stem as soon as possible and bring it to the shaman. The heart-piercing stem was generally used to treat internal injuries that were beyond the warrior's self-healing range. Such injuries were extremely dangerous, so they had to be treated immediately after they were sent back. The medicine had to be prepared immediately. Every minute delay would increase the danger. Seeing that there were still several heart-piercing stem in the wooden box, Xiao Xian reached out and took one. He gently pinched the stem of the heart-piercing stem from the bottom to the top, along the spiral. Don't mess. Guizhe noticed Xiao Xian's movements and was about to tell Xiao Xian not to mess with the herbs. After all, he was a greenhorn. However, when he turned his head and saw the scene in front of him, he held back his words. After Xiao Xian quickly finished pinching, he held the heart-piercing stem that was half an arm long in one hand and a small stone knife in the other. Xiao Xian specially polished the knife with a piece of high-quality stone, and the stone was sent to him by the shaman in the first half of the year because of Xiao Xian's meritorious service. It was not big. After all, high-quality stone was extremely difficult to find. After polishing some small stone tools, Xiao Xian kept the rest of the stone. When he saw the small stone knife Guizhe used to peel the bark on the first day, he went back and polished one himself. High-quality stone was not easy to polish, so it took him a few days to finish. He just brought it with him today and didn't expect to use it. The knife flashed several times. After several times, Xiao Xian withdrew the knife and pulled the heart-piercing stem from the top to the other side like peeling a banana. It was very smooth. It was completely different from when Guizhe peeled the heart-piercing stem. Guizhe even forgot what he was doing. He opened his eyes wide and stared at Xiao Xian's movements. When the skin was pulled close to the end, according to Guizhe's usual practice, he should use the stone knife to directly cut off the skin and part of the end. As for the inner core, he usually cut it vertically from the middle and carefully dug it out bit by bit. However, Xiao Xian didn't do that. Instead, when he got close to the end, he pinched the end and twisted it gently. Then he pulled out a thin black inner core along with the end. Guizhe, the expression on his face was already frozen. It wasn't that she hadn't tried before. It was because she had tried that she knew how difficult it was to pull out the inner core like this. However, in front of her, a newbie who didn't know anything did it so easily, as if he had practiced it thousands of times. The whole set of movements was smooth and without any pause. In fact, Xiao Xian wasn't too sure why he could do it so perfectly for the first time. It was like a kind of instinct. It wasn't Xiao Xian's own instinct, but after watching the Wu roll, it was like a kind of instinctive consciousness. When he was operating, it seemed that someone was telling him how to do it, how to use force, and how to pull. The whole set of movements almost completely copied the scene of the string of runes about the heart-piercing stem that appeared on the animal skin roll. Because of Xiao Xian's participation, the medicine was quickly prepared. Guizhe took the medicine and ran over, leaving Xiao Xian and the turtle in the medicine house. About 2 hours later, the shaman came over, looking tired. Guizhe stayed there to take care of the wounded and didn't go back to the medicine house with the shaman. When the shaman came in, Xiao Xian was feeding the turtle with the medicine waste. "How's it going over there?" Xiao Xian asked and handed a glass of water to him. The shaman sat on the wooden chair and took 2 sips of water. He calmed down and said, "It's fine. That means that there is no danger." Xiao Xian continued to feed the turtle with the waste. The shaman stared at Xiao Xian. Guizhe had already said that Xiao Xian dealt with the heart-piercing stem. He was not too surprised. He glanced at the stone table in the corner and the animal skin roll on the table. He opened his mouth and said, "Xian, what? Do you want to be a shaman?" "I don't want to." The shaman, his heart was broken. +++++==== looking for recommendation tickets in the new week. By the way, this book will be on the shelves at 12 o'clock on May 1st, Friday. It seems that there are double monthly tickets during the May 1st period. Here, Chen Ci asked for a guaranteed monthly ticket for next month. P.S. I got a disease called pre-shelf anxiety syndrome. From Star Hunter to Hui Mao, from Hui Mao to Yuan Zhan, this disease is still not cured. Chapter 102. If it were other people in the tribe, they would be thrilled to hear the shaman's words, but the one sitting here was Xiao Xian. The shaman had expected that Xiao Xian would refuse, but he didn't expect it to be so straightforward. The shaman had been looking for a successor for a long time. As the spiritual leader of the tribe, the shaman had to choose the right successor. Therefore, the recent generations of the shaman had spent a lot of effort on the selection of successors. When Gigu was still young, he was chosen by the shaman. The shaman planned to train him from a young age, so he was named Gigu. The name Gigu came from the blessing incantation, "Water returns to its gully." It was obvious that the shaman had high expectations for Gigu. Unfortunately, the shaman was studying some newly found herds at that time, so he forgot to keep an eye on Gigu. When he came back to his senses, he found that Gigu was already on his way to becoming a warrior, pursuing the peak of power and never looking back. Gigu respected the shaman as much as the others in the tribe. If anyone said something bad about the shaman, he would fight back. But since he was young, his biggest goal was to become a powerful warrior. The shaman didn't get angry with Gigu, but he began to reflect. The main idea of the tribe was to become a powerful warrior, and they were very persistent in the pursuit of power. Those who were forced couldn't become a qualified shaman. The successor had to be willing to do so. After Gigu, the shaman began to pay attention to other people in the tribe. Because everyone wanted to become a warrior, the shaman wanted to choose from those who couldn't awaken. If they couldn't awaken, would they be willing to be a shaman wholeheartedly? It didn't matter whether they could awaken their totemic power or not. As long as they met the requirements, they would be able to inherit the power from the shaman. As for the original power, it didn't have much effect after becoming a shaman, because the shaman couldn't go out of the tribe. Nothing could happen to the shaman. No one could guarantee that nothing would happen to him after he left the tribe. Therefore, generally speaking, the shaman of the tribe would not leave the tribe after he took over the responsibilities of the previous shaman. No one in the tribe would let the shaman get involved in danger. If the leader was gone, they could choose another powerful one, but not the shaman. Every shaman would be chosen very early on, and once they were chosen, they would teach them by example. This was a tradition. As for the requirements for the candidates, no one could say for sure. It was completely up to the shaman to decide. Among the generations of shamans, there were men, women, warriors, and people who had never awakened their totemic powers. Therefore, whether or not one could awaken their totemic powers was not the deciding factor. However, after more than 20 years after Gigu, the shaman still couldn't find a suitable candidate. Occasionally, he would go down the mountain to see the other children in the Mountain Foot district, but every time, he would return disappointed. Until one day, Gigu came with his newborn daughter and asked the shaman to give her a name. The moment the shaman saw the baby in Gigu's arms, he had another idea. He named the baby Guizhe, which was also derived from the blessing spell. The soil belongs to the house, the water belongs to the ravine, the insects don't work, the grass belongs to the pond. Therefore, from a very young age, Guizhe was trained as the next shaman. At that time, only a few people living on a mountaintop knew about it. However, the shaman didn't expect to see Xiao Xian again. Since Xiao Xian awakened, he acted differently from the others. Since then, the shaman really began to pay attention to him. Moreover, after that, many things changed his view of Xiao Xian again and again. If the reason why Xiao Xian improved faster than the others was because of his talent, then what about Xiao Xian's ability to see things that others couldn't, and his ability to recover faster than intermediate totemic warriors? Now, he could even see Wu roll. Why did he have such power? In fact, the shaman didn't know, but he believed that it was because of the fire seed. The fire seed in the tribe was incomplete, but since Xiao Xian awakened, it was more like the awakening of a complete fire seed. But at the same time, he had some abilities similar to the shaman's, which allowed him to see things that other warriors couldn't. When the shaman took over, he would pass on his abilities to the next shaman. However, Xiao Xian didn't get the inheritance, but he already had similar abilities. Could it be that he was the descendant of the previous shaman? It didn't make sense. When the shaman retired, he would pass on his abilities to the next shaman. The shaman wouldn't be so selfish, and his loyalty was unquestionable. Moreover, after flipping through several population registration scrolls, the shaman confirmed that Xian's ancestors were indeed ordinary warriors in the tribe. Until now, the shaman hadn't found the exact answer, but he didn't care about it. He planned to persuade Xiao Xian to take over the position of shaman, but he didn't expect to be rejected so directly. You really don't want to? The shaman asked again, which was rare. Xiao Xian looked at the shaman, but didn't say anything. He was different from the natives. His thoughts, ideas, principles, and so on were all very different. How could he take over the position? But he couldn't say these. Fine. The shaman sighed and didn't continue with this topic. Instead, he asked, have you read those animal skin scrolls? Yes. Do you understand? Yes. Xian, do you want to see more Wu roll? The shaman asked. Yes. Xiao Xian was very curious about many things recorded in the Wu roll. At the same time, he guessed that some of the more ancient Wu roll might contain more secrets of the tribe. If he wanted to know more about the tribe, he could only start from the shaman. And the Wu roll was an excellent history book. I can show you more Wu roll, the shaman said slowly. Xiao Xian didn't say anything, but waited for the shaman's next words. The shaman raised his head, glanced at the stone table with the herbs, and continued, I hope you can help Gui Zhe. Of course, even if the shaman didn't say it, Xiao Xian would teach Gui Zhe what he knew. Helping others was also helping himself. The bags of herbs that were given before the hunt were all prepared by Gui Zhe. Xiao Xian was naturally happy to help Gui Zhe increase his efficiency. The shaman nodded with satisfaction. After all, he was old and had a lot of things to do. He wanted to teach Gui Zhe, but he didn't have the ability. It was impossible for him to teach Gui Zhe everything. It was also impossible for him to teach her every method of handling medicinal herbs. Gui Zhe's knowledge of medicinal herbs was, in fact, learned from others. For example, if he had time to teach Gui Zhe the heart-piercing stem, perhaps Gui Zhe would master it faster. But the shaman always thought that maybe when Gui Zhe took over the shaman's responsibility, he would inherit the shaman's knowledge and understand the Wu roll. What he spent more time teaching Gui Zhe was temperament, attitude, worldview, and some things related to the overall situation of the tribe. These were the most important things. And now Xiao Xian's performance could solve this problem very well. Although it was inevitable that he felt a little regretful, the shaman was still satisfied. After chatting with Xiao Xian about the herbs on the Wu roll, the shaman got up and was about to leave. Before leaving, the shaman said to Xiao Xian, from tomorrow onwards, come to my place in the morning. Some Wu roll can't be brought here. Come to the medicine house in the afternoon. Okay, Xiao Xian replied and bowed to the shaman seriously. Gui Zhe didn't go back to the medicine house. Xiao Xian had nothing to do, so he processed all the unprocessed herbs on the stone table. It was only the preliminary processing, so it wasn't difficult. The processing steps of these herbs were all recorded on the Wu roll. These days, he also saw how Gui Zhe processed them, so he knew some of the problems that needed to be paid attention to. Like the heart-piercing stem, Gui Zhe processed them skillfully. When he left the medicine house and went down the mountain, Xiao Xian looked up at the sky. Cha-Cha was hovering in the sky above his head. The world is so big. Do you want to go out and see it with your own eyes? Xiao Xian whispered. == soil in its own house, water in its own gully, insects don't work, grass and trees in its own pond. This sentence came from the ancient ballad Wax, which was borrowed here. Chapter 103. The next day, Xiao Xian came to the shaman's stone house early in the morning. The shaman gave him an animal skin roll that described the methods of collecting and processing 10 kinds of rare animal herbs. Xiao Xian thought that the shaman would only let him read the Wu roll for herbs, but he didn't expect the shaman to ask, have you read it? Yes, if I can meet those animals, I am confident that I can get all the herbs. Xiao Xian answered, yes. The shaman didn't comment, and then said to the guard at the door, if it's not urgent, don't come in. Seeing the shaman's attitude, Xiao Xian also became serious. It seemed that the shaman had something important to say. Sit here. The shaman pointed to a short table next to him, and then took out an unwritten animal skin roll and a stone plate that contained a shaman's special paint. This array, Xiao Xian roughly understood what he meant. Do you know how the Wu roll is drawn? The shaman asked. No. Xiao Xian was a little confused. Wasn't the Wu roll made by the shaman alone? Seeing the confusion in Xiao Xian's eyes, the shaman said slowly, the power of the totem is not only one kind of power, body and spirit. Becoming a warrior is the strengthening of the body. The other kind exists in everyone's body, but it's not much. What's the other kind? Xiao Xian asked. The power of inheritance, the inheritance of spiritual consciousness. The shaman said. Every shaman would inherit a large amount of power from the previous shaman. Since you can understand the Wu roll, I believe that you are different from others. You should have more power of inheritance than others. The shaman said. The power of inheritance. How do you understand it? Xiao Xian asked. The shaman looked at Xiao Xian, raised his pine bark-like finger, and pointed at Xiao Xian's forehead. Ask the totem, and you'll get the answer. Xiao Xian closed his eyes and felt the totem in his mind. The two horns were surrounded by dancing flames, and nothing else could be seen. Just as Xiao Xian was puzzled, the shaman's voice rang in his ears. Look carefully. Xiao Xian continued to observe the totem, down to the details. Suddenly, Xiao Xian felt something and looked at the bottom of the flames, at the faint blue flames. There was more than one layer of flames. Xiao Xian opened his eyes and asked tentatively, Blue? The shaman nodded his head in satisfaction. As for where Xiao Xian's power of inheritance came from, the shaman didn't know and didn't want to find out. How many? The shaman asked. Xiao Xian looked at the brush beside him, then looked at the shaman and asked, May I? The shaman handed over a thin brush. In Xiao Xian's eyes, the brush wasn't exquisite and it wasn't easy to use. It wasn't as good as a carbonized tree branch. However, it wasn't the right time to find a carbonized tree branch, so he could use this brush to draw a rough picture. Xiao Xian drew a rough picture of the totem on the empty animal skin roll in front of him. The shaman looked at Xiao Xian's drawing, and his smile deepened. Not bad, his drawing skills were good, much better than many people in the tribe. However, Wu Roll's drawing wasn't just a good drawing. Whether the lines were good or not, it didn't have much to do with Wu Roll. Here, Xiao Xian drew a line on the flames around the horns. This should be the power of inheritance, right? Very good. This is indeed the power of inheritance, the shaman said with satisfaction. The shaman was about to say something else, but Xiao Xian continued. And here too. Wait, let me take a closer look. The shaman's words were stuck in his throat. Every time Xiao Xian drew a line, the shaman's face couldn't help but twitch. As Xiao Xian drew more and more, the shaman's expression became more and more strange. His eyes were filled with both joy and sadness, and other complicated emotions. If it were someone else, they would have suspected that they were fooled, but the shaman knew that Xiao Xian was telling the truth. With so much power of inheritance, with such talent, he actually wanted to become a warrior. The shaman couldn't wait to kowtow in front of the fire pit where his ancestors were cremated. Ancestors, tell me, why didn't such a person become a shaman? If it were some hot-tempered shaman in the past, he probably would have chased after Xiao Xian with his walking stick and beaten him up. Xiao Xian compared the blue flames on the totem flames in his mind with the ones drawn on the animal skin scroll, then looked up at the shaman and said, that's all. That's all. The shaman gripped his walking stick tightly, feeling all kinds of emotions. In the end, he could only sigh helplessly. Xiao Xian really didn't think it was a lot, because among the flames around the horns, the blue flames did indeed occupy a very small proportion. Xiao Xian only heard the shaman say that most people didn't have much power of inheritance, but he didn't know what kind of not much the shaman meant, so he drew all of this. If he knew the shaman's standard, he would definitely hold back. The shaman stared at the totem drawing of the power of inheritance on the animal skin scroll and didn't say anything. Just as Xiao Xian was wondering what was wrong with the shaman said in a slightly heavy tone, Very good. This way it will be easier for you to draw. Xiao Xian listened attentively to the shaman's explanation of the Wu roll drawing method. The Wu roll drawing is actually the combination of the power of inheritance, the consciousness, and the drawing. The three of them have reached a state of integration. When the viewer was able to use the power of inheritance and become one with the painting that carried the consciousness, they would be able to interact with the consciousness of the painter. If they could control it accurately, the viewer would even be able to feel the emotions and other feelings of the painter. The extent of this interaction is related to the painter's foundation and the viewer's ability. The more profound the painter's foundation, the stronger the viewer's ability, and the clearer the interaction. The shaman explained the theory to Xiao Xian. If he wanted to draw the Wu roll, he had to understand all of this. When the shaman was almost done, Xiao Xian also took note of the shaman's words and understood most of it. Only then did he pick up the brush again and start his first Wu roll drawing. For those who were drawing the Wu roll for the first time, they would first practice by copying the Wu roll. This was because when copying the drawings on the Wu roll, there would be a guiding force that would make it easier for the person copying. Xiao Xian carefully looked at one of the drawings on the Wu roll, then put all of his attention on the animal skin scroll on the table in front of him. The moment before the tip of the brush touched the animal skin scroll, Xiao Xian had already activated the power of inheritance in his body and started to draw according to the shaman's instructions. At this moment, Xiao Xian poured all of his power of inheritance and all of his energy into the only point that the tip of the brush touched. He immersed himself in this only goal and started to slowly move the brush along the guidance of the original Wu roll. After finishing one stroke, Xiao Xian was already sweating profusely. He had used up almost all of his energy and felt like he was about to collapse. He was breathing heavily. Looking at the animal skin scroll again, it was only a small circle. Lifting his sleeve to wipe his sweat, Xiao Xian couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Drawing the Wu roll is so difficult. It's only one stroke, and it even looks like a simple circle, but it's so difficult to start from the beginning. It's full of difficulties. Sure enough, is it because the power of inheritance is not enough? Xiao Xian thought to himself. If the shaman knew what Xiao Xian was thinking at this moment, he probably wouldn't be able to stop himself from hitting him with his walking stick. When he first started copying, it was just a small dot, and he had to pause 3 times in the middle. Xiao Xian was able to complete it on his first try. Even in the past, not many shamans could do it. Chapter 104. In the past, Xiao Xian would never believe that he had only drawn one circle in the morning, and he was so tired that he was about to collapse. But now, he personally felt that drawing a circle could be so tiring, and it was even mentally exhausting. When he walked out of the stone house and looked at the surrounding scenery, Xiao Xian felt that the house in his field of vision seemed to be spinning. He looked up at the sky for a while and felt better. He was no longer dizzy and could stand steadily. Xiao Xian carried the stone box that the shaman gave him and went to the medicine house to help Gui Zhe process the herbs. He didn't know what the shaman said to Gui Zhe, but when Xiao Xian taught her, she didn't ask too much. She just learned seriously and improved some of the ways to process herbs. Compared to drawing with Wu roll, processing herbs was much easier. When he went down the mountain, Xiao Xian had recovered from his tiredness. In the stone box that the shaman gave him, there were 2 animal skin scrolls, the shaman's special paint, and a writing brush. The shaman didn't have time to teach Xiao Xian every day. Most of the time, Xiao Xian had to practice by himself. The stone box was covered with a grass net, so when Xiao Xian carried it back, it was still shaking. "What is this?" Old Ko asked when he saw Xiao Xian come back with the stone box. It's a task assigned by the shaman. Although the shaman provided materials for Xiao Xian to practice, he didn't want him to waste them. When he practiced, he had to show them to the shaman. This was also a task assigned by the shaman. When Old Ka heard Xiao Xian's words, he suddenly felt a sense of awe. He even looked at the stone box with great respect. He didn't dare to look at it. Since Xiao Xian wanted to draw, he didn't ask any more questions. In his opinion, whatever the shaman did was right and meaningful. Don't let the shaman down. Olka said solemnly. Back in his room, Xiao Xian took out the animal skin scroll. There were 2 animal skin scrolls in the stone box. One of them had not been scribbled at all, while the other was the one he had practiced this morning. There was even a circle on it. Opening the animal skin roll, Xiao Xian took out the paints and brushes. After thinking for a while, he took out the charcoal pencil he had made, intending to try it out. However, just as Xiao Xian was about to activate his power of inheritance, he quickly flicked his wrist and moved the charcoal pencil away. The charcoal pencil broke into many small pieces and scattered on the stone table. If Xiao Xian hadn't moved away quickly, these scattered pieces would have fallen directly into the animal skin roll. Sure enough, not every pen used to draw Wu roll was suitable. The brush that the shaman gave Xiao Xian was made of ferocious beast hair and special wood. Giving up on using other brushes, Xiao Xian picked up the one the shaman gave him and continued to draw. Since it was practice, he naturally started with the drawing he had done this morning. With his first attempt, he became more proficient in drawing the second time. He still didn't draw quickly. When Xiao Xian finished drawing the circle, he realized that it was already dark. At least an hour had passed. Compared to the morning, the drawing time was not much shorter. However, this time, Xiao Xian was not as tired as he was in the morning. The dizziness was also not as strong. This was an improvement. For the next few days, Xiao Xian would bring the stone box to the shaman's place in the morning. However, the shaman was busy these days. After Xiao Xian went over, he would sit in a small room in the stone house and practice. If he had any questions, he would ask the shaman when he was free. The shaman didn't even have time to see the results of Xiao Xian's practice. 5 days later, winter officially arrived. The temperature plummeted overnight. When Xiao Xian opened the door in the morning, all he saw was white. In the big bird's nest on the roof, Cha-Cha was stretching its neck to look down. When it saw Xiao Xian come out, it flapped its wings, shook off the snow on its body, and flew up. Cha-Cha slept outside, not because Xiao Xian forced it to. When winter was coming, Cha-Cha had no intention of hiding in the house. Now that it was snowing heavily, it didn't hide either. Since it could withstand this kind of weather, Xiao Xian didn't care. After all, Cha-Cha was not a pet bird in a greenhouse. If it flew to the forest one day, it would also have to endure this kind of weather. It couldn't be pampered. Caesar and Cha-Cha followed Xiao Xian up the mountain. When they were about to reach the top, Caesar went down the mountain by himself, while Cha-Cha flew to other places to look for food. Just by looking at this point, these two were well trained. When Xiao Xian arrived at the stone house, Ta and Gigu, the 2 team leaders of the hunting group, were already there. Xiao Xian didn't want to disturb them, so he bowed to them and went inside with the stone box. He went to the small room to continue practicing the Wu roll painting. The 2 team leaders only knew that the shaman was teaching Xiao Xian something about herbs. They felt that Xiao Xian was really a lucky kid. For people in the tribe, it was a great honor to be able to learn from the shaman. They would never have guessed what Xiao Xian was really learning. Xiao Xian opened the animal skin roll, but didn't start painting immediately. When he came in, he heard the 2 team leaders apologizing. In the past year, some of the herbs they found were not what they needed. It was just that many herbs and plants looked similar, so it was not easy to identify them. Even though they had drawn pictures on the animal skin roll, there were still mistakes in what the advanced group brought back every time. For example, some of the herbs and plants Gigu brought back from the last hunting trip had to be removed. This was a communication gap. The shaman couldn't tell the warriors in detail what he said. It was just words without a real picture and without a practical operation, so the communication was greatly reduced. It wasn't their fault. After all, not everyone could understand the Wu roll like Xiao Xian. It would be great if everyone could understand the shaman volumes one day. Thinking of this, Xiao Xian raised his eyes and looked at the stone table in front of him. There was an unfinished Wu roll on the table. Xiao Xian took it and looked at it. The content surprised him. It was about farming, but unfortunately, Xiao Xian couldn't see the picture clearly through these pictures. This was a copy of the ancient scroll. No one knew how many times it had been copied, and the original consciousness of the first painter had been blurred. When copying an ancient scroll, Because it wasn't seen with one's own eyes, it was equivalent to reading someone else's description and then retelling it. The retelling would inevitably add some subjective consciousness. It was like a sentence passed from one person to another. The meaning wouldn't change much, but after being passed by many people, what would it become in the end? 99% of the time, the original words would be changed. Although some things could be seen from the transcribed version of the ancient scroll, it was not as clear as the original version, but there was an increased sense of fuzziness. Just like the one in front of him, the shaman didn't personally experience farming, so naturally, he couldn't understand the wishes of the original painter. The one that was left behind should be a copy of a previous shaman's copy. Since the shaman left it here, it meant that he didn't mean to hide it from Xiaoxian. Xiaoxian looked at the animal skin scroll for a while. Although it wasn't clear, he could still be sure that the picture drawn was not of any place in the tribe. The Wu Roll was more like a plain area, with vast farmland and fertile soil. He couldn't see what was being planted, but he could see some vague figures working in the fields. Unfortunately, the area where the tribe was now was not suitable for farming, and the people in the tribe didn't have the intention to do so. There were some edible plants in the mountains around the training ground, which was enough for the people in the tribe. The shaman didn't know how long he would have to wait to see the scene drawn in the animal skin scroll. He left this copy probably because he wanted Xiaoxian to look forward to it. For every person in the tribe, that scene was indeed shocking. Unfortunately, even a shaman didn't expect Xiaoxian to be so special. Putting the animal skin scroll aside, Xiaoxian continued his practice. Now he wasn't copying the roll, but drawing by himself. What he wanted to draw now was a plant he saw in the green field. After mulling over it for a while, he put down his brush and painstakingly finished the drawing. Looking at the animal skin roll, it was really difficult to connect the runes drawn on the animal skin roll with the plant in the green space. The lines were twisted like earthworms. However, aesthetics were secondary. The most important thing was whether or not he could draw the picture in his sea of consciousness. For Xiaoxian, he had already succeeded. In his previous life, Xiaoxian's archaeology classmate once said, "Prehistoric art is the existence of prehistoric ideology, not aesthetic or aesthetic ideology." At that time, Xiaoxian didn't understand, but now he seemed to understand a lot. The creator of the Wu Roll was just drawing in the real world. With the help of the power of inheritance, he drew his consciousness in the form of drawing. That was all. It had nothing to do with beauty or ugliness. Thinking of this, Xiaoxian felt a lot better. Looking at the picture he just drew, Xiaoxian thought, if I showed this to the archaeologists in my previous life, they wouldn't know what I drew. Chapter 105. In the afternoon, when Xiaoxian left the medicine house, it was still early in the morning. There were not many herbs to be processed, and there was not much work to be done recently. So, Xiaoxian planned to go down the mountain early and practice his Wu Roll drawing when he got back. However, after walking for a short while, Xiaoxian stopped and listened carefully. He lifted his foot and turned towards the direction of the sound. Between the mountainside and the top of the mountain, there was a special place. It was a training ground specially opened by the warriors. However, this training ground was not for the warriors, but for the children on the mountainside and the top of the mountain who had not awakened their totem power. The children on the mountain began to receive training very early, and this was their main training ground. However, the space was limited, and sometimes they had to clear the place for throwing. If there were too many people, they would be easily hurt by the wooden or stone tools thrown out. The children here were all children who had not awakened their totem power, and their abilities were limited. Most of the people who could train here were from the noble families on the mountain. Their elders held important positions in the tribe, and were at least the leaders of the hunting teams. Otherwise, they would not be able to find a place to move around, and would be excluded. Everywhere, there was a competition of fathers. Xiaoxian had never been there for training before. Later, when he awakened his totem power, he passed by the training ground once when he went down the mountain and just watched from a short distance. It was winter, and snow was falling heavily. In such weather, there were many noises coming from the training ground, and it sounded like there were quite a lot of people there. As he walked towards the training ground, the noises became clearer and clearer. Compared to the foot of the mountain, the main roads were cleared every day in winter, no matter how heavy the snow was. Some of the children who had not awakened their totem power would come out wrapped in thick animal skins. Most of them did not lack food, and the animal skins they wore were of good quality. Even if it was cold, it would not be life-threatening. Following the cleared path, Xiao Xian came to the kid training ground. There were nearly 100 people in the training ground, from 5 or 6 years old to new warriors who had awakened their totem power for 1 or 2 years. Because they could not withstand the cold like totem warriors, the children in the training ground, who had not awakened their totem power, were all wrapped up like rice dumplings. At this moment, there were 3 children in the middle of the crowd. Xiao Xian recognized 2 of them. That was Yang Guang from Xiao Mai's family. Yang Guang was the name of these 2 people. Xiao and Mai were twins. Yang was a boy and was born earlier than his sister Guang. There were very few twins in the tribe. At present, Yang Guang was the only twin in the tribe. It was said that when Yang Guang was born, the shaman went to see him in person. Yang Guang was 1 year younger than Xiao Xian, and he hadn't awakened his totem power yet. However, both of them had good potential. After the end of this winter, Mai planned to let them join the preliminary team and send them to the shaman. Many people in the tribe knew that Guang from Xiao Mai's family was born with great strength. She would definitely awaken her totem power in the future, but she was not easy to get along with. Compared to Guang, as the elder brother, Yang was not so outstanding. However, he had a good temper and did not quarrel with others. Every time when Guang fought with others, he would go up and stop them. The 2 siblings had very different personalities. Of course, this was only the version that was heard. As a person who had a good relationship with Xiao Mai's family, Xiao Xian naturally knew that the real situation was very different from the rumors in the tribe. As the younger sister, Guang was born with great strength. She could fight against 2 people at once before awakening her totem power. This was a fact. However, it was not true that she was impulsive, irritable, and liked to fight. The tribe treated girls differently from boys. If a boy was punched by a girl, people would say, being punched by a girl won't make you lose a piece of meat. But what if it was the other way around? What a bastard. How dare he? Needless to say, the boy's parents would teach him a lesson in person. It was not that there was any gentlemanly behavior here. That was all bullshit. Here, it was because the successive shamans attached great importance to the protection of girls. After all, it was related to the tribe's reproduction and future. The ratio of men to women in the tribe was not equal. Every year, there were fewer girls than boys. For this reason, the successive shamans were worried to death. If there were other tribes nearby, they could just kidnap a girl from outside to be their wife. However, the tribe was almost isolated now. Excluding those who were close to them by blood, there were even fewer people who could be found. Now, there were many old bachelors in the tribe. If Oldka had not been injured in the past, he might have already had grandchildren. This was also why every time they walked on the path of glory, the returning young warriors were like peacocks spreading their tails, showing off themselves and their prey. It was precisely because of this difference in treatment in the tribe that every time there was a problem that needed to be solved by force, or if there was someone who was extremely unpleasant to the eye, the one who would charge forward was Guang. As the elder brother, Yang would pull his sister from behind and shout, "Stop fighting. Sorry, Guang is too impulsive," and so on. For example, Aguang and Aguang were having a dispute with another party. Aguang was using both her hands and legs to fight the people in front of her, but her brother Ayong was holding her back, so she couldn't kick him several times. However, she also succeeded a few times. Otherwise, how did the footprints on the other side come about? Yang pulled his sister and seemed to be dissuading her. However, when someone from the other side stood up to speak, Guang kicked him. She did not kick him, but she scraped his animal skin clothes. The person who just stood up retreated. Yang really couldn't hold her back. Who was he kidding? These 2 people's strength was actually about the same. If they really wanted to dissuade her, It was impossible that they couldn't hold her back. Yang Guang was not old and did not have the honest character of Chiao Mai and his wife. Instead, he was mischievous. The day before, he learned some simple rope traps from Xiao Xian, and the next day he could go out and trap people. Seeing that there were people on the other side who had awakened their totemic power and were about to stand up, Xiao Xian spoke first, "Guang Guang." The people on the other side all looked over. After seeing Xiao Xian, Guang's originally angry face suddenly turned into a smile. She broke free from her brother's pull and ran toward Xiao Xian. Because she was wearing too much and even covered with a cloak, she looked like a moving dumpling when she ran over. When Guang saw Xiao Xian, it was as if she had found a backer. She pulled Xiao Xian's arm and said, "Brother Xian, they hit me." The few people who had been kicked by Guang wanted to spit out blood. Bullshit. Bullshit. Anyone with eyes could see who was the victim. When the people on the scene saw Xiao Xian, they all had different expressions. The younger ones were not sensible and did not care much about Xiao Xian. But the older ones were different, especially those who had awakened their totemic power in the same batch as Xiao Xian. Not to mention that Xiao Xian had made great contributions in the past year and had joined the advanced group. Even now, Xiao Xian was still learning things from the shaman. In their eyes, this was a shining halo. Therefore, even if Xiao Xian could not come over and compete with his father and was born in the cave, no one dared to ask him to leave. Ku, who was standing behind the crowd, felt even more complicated. He was also from the cave, and at this time last year, he was the most envied person in the cave. But now, when they talked about Xiao Xian, how did it feel? In just 1 year, he had changed so much. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.